evening, everyone. Joint meeting with the Finance Committee and the Select Board, discussing our budget process. This is the first of 3 meetings that we're going to have with the boards. We got a jam-packed agenda tonight, so let's just jump right into it. We have the school department as first up for tonight.
Great, thanks.
If I could just quickly go over our agenda for tonight. So schools, Parks and Rec is going to be giving a presentation on the results from the 2023 recreational needs study. So that'll be a half hour. Robert Heacock will be zooming in from, I think, in Kansas for that. Then we have a presentation from Parks and Rec, EHS, planning, inspections, IT, and then the other pieces that Jim and I will be covering at the end, and then concluding with the Finance Committee and Reserve Fund piece. So also as a reminder that we'll be meeting again next Monday. This is the change out from our meeting on the 16th, which was snowed out. So we have added to this an executive session for the Select Board. This is to discuss a fire union grievance. So we put that on, and the meeting will be starting at 6:30 from that point. And then finally, our next meeting will be Saturday, February 3rd. This is our Super Saturday meeting. We have some of the other boards and committees coming in, including Conservation, Board of Health, and Cemetery. And then we go to our police, fire, and DPW, and then we'll wrap the meeting up from there. So if anyone hasn't marked their calendar, please do so accordingly. So with that said, turn over to the schools.
Perfect. So with a quorum present and also board posted as well, I'll just call the joint meeting of the school committee, finance committee, and select board to order January 23rd at 6:35 p.m. We'll proceed with our presentation. Make it official. What's that?
It's okay.
Am I going to get the slides on that screen?
Perfect. There you go.
All right, awesome. So thank you. Thank you for having us this evening. We got a couple of slides prepared for everyone, so we're just going to go over the review of the budgetary process the school department's been working through, talk about some of the staff salaries and the positions that we were looking for that we're going to look to defer to the next budgetary cycle. Some of the other expenses that appeared in our request, and some of the, again, deferrals that we're going to make to the following year, which is going to impact likely the use of our school choice fund account, or what we refer to as like an emergency reserve. The revenue is generated from school choice students, and then we'll have a wrap up with the grand total of the 2025 budget request. So on the next slide, we have been working diligently, the subcommittee, budget subcommittee, with business manager and the superintendent to put together our request for fiscal year 24. It was first presented, the information was first made available back in December to the Finance Committee and Select Board. And what we were looking at was a 5.34% increase, which represented an additional 1.305 on top of the previous year's appropriated funds for a grand total of $25,738,928. That received some feedback as the grand plan came together for the town, that it would be difficult to honor that. I believe every department was asked to take a much closer look at their budget and see if we could try to close the gap on a townwide deficit. The ask from the Finance Committee was to try to come up with a $270,000 savings as it relates to 2024 fiscal year. So message was received loud and clear. Budget subcommittee, along with business manager Steve Mark and superintendent Kelly Clenchy, are pleased to present our revised budget, which reflects a $250,000 decrease from previously presented. We just want to highlight where some of those areas are going to come from. You'll see the first line item there is staff salaries. Just double checking that you folks have it down there as well. Currently, we have 2 vacancies within teaching assistant positions. So these were positions that were in our fiscal year 2023. We're currently posted for those positions. We hope to attract and retain qualified teaching assistants. They're so important within our district. But with 2 vacancies present, we're not spending those dollars currently. We feel that if we're asked to try to get somewhere near 270, what we're going to do is just defer those expenses, present sort of our total salary number for fiscal year 24 without those figures included. We currently still are posted for those positions, so if and when they get filled, we will simply just spend that money out of our school choice account. The other position there that we're looking to eliminate from the initial request is a central office position, additional administrative support. This is something that the school department has asked for year after year after year. As the school system has gotten a little bit larger over the years, as the educational needs and the complexity of offering all the different services, social emotional learning, special ed, the school department really hasn't grown itself in a number of years. But if we're being asked to sort of tighten, if everybody's being asked to tighten the belt, this is one place where we thought we could look to defer that yet again another year. So the salary savings there is to the tune of $112,000 and change. There were a couple other expenses listed. Typically, back to school, everyone comes home with a list of things to get prepared for the next school year. I know it's a bit of a daunting task for families, but there are also requests that come up over the course of the year, like, hey, we need paper towels, we need Lysol wipes, we need Kleenex, we need all this stuff. That's just typically how we do it in Littleton. In addition to that, there's about a $10,000 spend per school that the school department kicks in for classroom supplies. We've gone ahead and asked the principals to go ahead and put together the list for their respective schools for next year. They're in the process of doing that, where that's a variable expense, and we feel like we might be able to ask the community to help us there. We're eliminating that from the fiscal year 24 budget. Again, if there's an item on there that the schools absolutely need and we're not able to come through with it, we'll simply just look to spend the money out of our school choice account. And then the another big ticket item here is curriculum material upgrades. So there's about $130,000 in our rolling appropriated budget currently for curriculum upgrades, curriculum review, materials as it relates to professional development and the like. We were asking for $150,000. There are 2 pushes within the K-5 environment. One in math, which we've implemented. We're in the process of, Kelly shared with me today, Superintendent Clenchey shared with me today that we've got some feedback from that, and it appears that the testing went well. It's paying dividends. The next push would be the way in which we might look to evaluate how we teach reading in the K-5 environment, and that's going to come with a hefty price tag over the next couple of years. We are looking to decrease our budget by $97,000. So we'll have to keep some for curriculum upgrades. Again, we're piloting, or we've been piloting a math program. We're getting ready to possibly pilot a reading program. We're not necessarily looking to decrease services or hold back on the decisions that we made. We'll continue to march forward, but this was our best effort to get to 270. The grand total is 250,000. Right? So this next slide here highlights the 2020, I may have been misspeaking, 2023, 2020. This highlights our 2025 fiscal year request. We'll start with the 2024 appropriated budget of $24,433,262. Of course, we have to factor in contractual steps and lanes and COLA for the staff. That's to the tune of $801,472. I do want to highlight that we just renegotiated the LEA contract for the next 3 years. It was at the end of the day, I think both sides came together, and it was a very rewarding process. I want to thank the LEA for the work that was done. We're hearing of course, other towns that are on strike and asking for a lot more money than town's can afford. So we were able to successfully negotiate an increase for them, which both sides felt were fair. So that came at the tune of $801,472. There is a speech pathologist position that we need to increase to meet the service needs of our students. Currently that position's .8. We need to move it to a full-time position based upon the caseload. So that's $18,665. Transportation increase of $126,442. That's was a bit of a double whammy. Last cycle, our contract with the current bus company provider was up. We knew that going into that, even if we were negotiating same number of buses, same services, we were likely going to get hit with an increase. School committee made a decision to move from a 3-tier system, where we were going to run the buses 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the afternoon, to a 2-tier system, which basically allowed the high school and middle school students to start later in the day. It compressed the drop-off and pickup time for families that have children in multiple schools, me being one of them. It's a huge benefit there. We're not at the bus stop for 90 minutes. We're at the bus stop my family's at the bus stop for 10 minutes, which is great. So that's an increase there as well. And then this other operational costs, there are some details listed: vehicle repairs, fuel costs, custodial supplies, legal services, HVAC maintenance contract. I can talk about those individually, but the grand total is $57,000. Of course, we have those line items in our appropriated funds from 2024. However, what we're realizing is that we're just not carrying enough for those particular line items. So we have a small fleet of vehicles. We're at the point here where we're putting money back into those to keep them running. We think it's a prudent thing to do, but everybody knows what a set of tires costs and all that stuff these days. So there's a couple bucks there. Same for fuel costs. Custodial supplies, I think, saw an increase in pricing as it related to COVID, and then the price just never came back down. Legal services, as the landscape of special education changes and continues to get more complex, we're leaning on legal services a little bit more than we have in years past to make sure that we avoid big ticket spends. So we're up to speed on all of the legal services, all of the 504 and the IEPs, and that's not to say that we don't have families that want to be represented, and therefore we have to have representation and things like that. But we're noticing a little bit of an increase in our legal service spend. And then just like how the busing contract was up last year, our HVAC maintenance contract is up this year. Business manager feels like that's been a really good value for us, especially with the aging units that we have. We feel like we've gotten a good bang for our buck there. Based upon some research, we're expecting about a 10 to 15% increase to renew that same contract. So long story short, that boils down to a $57,000 increase. And then the original curriculum materials request of $150,000 has been cut down to $52,000, which is simply just to implement what's sort of already in place. So the grand total on top of last year's appropriated funds is $1,055,666. I don't like the way that number ends, but that's just the way the math boiled down. That represents a 4.32% increase, which we feel great about. It's below 5%. I read the town's budget report. The budget report assumes a 5% growth within the school department budget. So this year, where we're all kicking in a little bit, we're pleased to represent a 4.32% increase with a grand total of $25,488,928. This will likely impact our school choice funds. Every year we receive funds from those that wish to attend Littleton Public Schools by choice, which I think is a testament to the level of services and the quality of education that we provide here in town. From those dollars received annually, we allocate about $250,000 towards salaries. The idea behind school choice is you have an empty seat, you might as well fill it. It's just not that simple. With the empty seats being filled, additional educational staffing is sometimes required, services are provided. So we earmark about $250,000 of those receipts for salaries to help offset that salaries. The $250,000, which was previously identified a couple of slides ago, that would be if we were to incur all of those additional costs that we are deferring until future years, or we fill the TA positions, for example, the schools spend the 40 grand, we get hit with the extracurriculum expenses because we move forward. So that's the $250,000. And then we are dipping into the school choice funds to the tune of $178,000, which represents the additional transportation increase with renegotiating that contract. I don't know that there was much of a negotiation because they were the only bidder. And the change from running 3 loops to 2. So the planned use of our school choice funds is $678,064. We're fortunate that there's been terrific financial stewardship of the school department budget, and that we have an attractive school system where we have families electing to send their children here. The balance in our school choice account as of June 30th was $3,007,667. We anticipate that we'll receive close to $500,000 this year in school choice funds, so we will end the year likely with a balance less than we started with for the first time in a long time. We carry those school choice funds, just so everyone's aware, in the event that we have an extraordinary special education expense that takes place. So there are situations that exist where a student could require $3, $4, maybe even $500,000 worth of specialized care, transportation services. That would, $3 million would certainly allow us to carry that load before we figured out a plan or had to increase our appropriated budget. So, like I said, we're fortunate to have that balance. We've worked hard to present a modified budget, and just want to relay to the families with children in the school system and those that value the education provided. The plan is not to reduce services. We're not in a position we're looking to cut staff. We're going to roll with the same program with some additional modifications, which we think will bring additional value. And we're looking for the town's support on the request, and we're prepared to spend out of the school choice funds where we deem necessary. So at this point in time, I'll open it up for questions.
I had one question. Early on, excuse me, in your presentation, I think you mentioned you have 2 open head count, 2 teachers that you haven't filled. Is it you haven't filled them because they're specialized skills that you haven't been able to find, or you haven't filled them because teachers aren't available to hire, or why are the openings there?
More the latter. It's a difficult position. You know, there's some turnover at the TA position, teaching assistant position. They do a lot of work for not as much compensation as a full-time teacher. So it's a difficult hire. You know, it takes a unique individual that's willing to come to work and grind it out every day and be comfortable with that paycheck received. We're posted. We think we'll fill them. We need them. Where we're not currently spending the dollars, it was an easy place to just try to make the math work.
First of all, Justice, I want to thank the school committee and Superintendent Clenchey and Steve Mark for working with the town and coming up with this reduction. Certainly understand pushing things to the school choice account. It's going to eventually come back into the operating budget, and we know that's going to happen probably next year. We need to do some planning to make sure that we can fund that, so we're not asking you to continuously hitting school choice. We certainly understand the value of having reserves. The town has its own reserves. It's prudent to keep that stuff in case of emergencies.
Absolutely.
And again, just thank you for working with us and making that reduction.
You're all very welcome.
It's appreciated.
I have a question on enrollment. So in our finance book, we had some of the enrollments. It looks like the high school's crept up. I mean, you got a baseline capacity. Looks like a 489 students. Is that including school choice?
Yes.
It does. So you have a little bit of flexibility there. Okay. And when I saw that number, I was like, whoa, right at the ceiling. So thank you.
I have a question on your slide where you presented the transportation. You showed the transportation was going up 12%. That's, that one, yes, that one. That's because you were pushing more of it onto the operational budget rather than the choice budget, or are we expecting another 12% increase next year, or?
So no, that 12% is 12, that represents 12% of the increase on top of the 24 budget. So those numbers add up to 100, I hope.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was to highlight that 78% of our additional ask comes from contractual salaries. Or does that say 76? I can't really tell. 76. So we really only had 24% to ask for, right? I mean, 76 was already spoken for through a very successfully mutually agreeable contract.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things that, and Gary and I approached the school department for this, one of the things that Ryan had done to balance this budget is to increase the amount of Chapter 70 money that was funding the budget. I think to a person, at least on the Finance Committee side of things, we weren't comfortable building a budget on that number, especially given what the state announced being short on reserves. That was what made the ask come. So I would put forth to the boards that $210,000 that we increased Chapter 70 for be funded, be taken out, and then replaced with this decrease here. That's $250,000. We also got news about the Schober Tech's tuition. It's going up to $905,000 roughly. We have $845 in the budget, so it's a $60,000 delta, and we have an extra $40,000 here, so we're still 20 short on the Schober Tech assessment. So we need to come up with that somewhere else. But this brings us a long way into making up a couple of things that were certainly concerning on our part in how we constructed this budget. So again, thank you.
You're welcome.
Steve, did the projected Neshoba Tech enrollment numbers go up? Or just
4
the cost
students.
went up?
Yeah, so,
We talked with Charlie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You know,
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any questions of us?
In the event that the Chapter 70 funds, surprise us positively, and some of that money is earmarked for, additional services that we're supposed to be providing within the district. I mean, it'd be nice to reconvene to discuss, once the town's in receipt of those funds, where they should go, and we'd certainly like to be considered one of the recipients of those funds so that we can make sure we're...
So one of the things that I'm not certain, I made this clear to Kelly when we were talking, was the extra money that came in for Chapter 70 last year is the basis for what we built the increase on for this year. So there's an extra 1% on top of those additional funds that made up the appropriation. So it's contained in there.
It's already baked in.
If anything over and above that, then we can talk about how that's allocated. There's still some things in this budget process that we need to flush out, so it's on the table as well as everything, but we will certainly include the school department in the discussion.
Great. We hope that opportunity presents itself.
Yeah. And any good news, We'll all talk about it.
Absolutely.
Nothing further, we will accept the motion to adjourn our joint meeting with the school committee, the finance committee, and the select board.
And second that?
Okay, motion made and second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming out.
You can stay.
And stick around, see how somebody else does.
Tough act to follow, Justin.
Liz, can you see if Alicia's out there, Liz?
Thank you, have a good night.
Good night, Steve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen?
Next up is
You want me to sit up yonder?
Yeah, I mean,
Alicia, whenever you're ready.
You have oh, you do have the presentation. And Robert is here.
Hi, I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Robert. I'll introduce Robert. Robert Heathcock is from ETC Institute. He has been in charge of operating this statistically valid recreational needs study that was conducted over the end of summer, beginning of fall. So I will let Robert do his presentation on the results of the survey. So Robert, whenever you're ready, you can take over, my friend.
Well, thank you, Alicia. I appreciate that. It's nice to see everyone. I don't know if you can, I don't know if this is going to work. I thought you were going to have it teed up.
So we do have it. We can see the
There you go.
presentation up here. So right now we have the first slide 15.
He can see it as well, I think.
Oh,
I can see it too.
okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so what you have before you, this is kind of a map showing the reach of ETC Institute, just a little bit about us. So more than 3 million people have been surveyed since 2006, more than 1,000 cities in 49 states. Next slide. So our agenda, we'll keep it pretty straightforward. We're going to go over quickly the purpose and methodology. The bottom line up front, our main conclusions, major findings. I'm going to summarize everything and then open it up for any questions you might have. So the purpose was to objectively assess residents' priorities for parks and indoor, outdoor recreation facilities and recreational, social, and cultural programs within the community. So long and short of it, we wanted to gauge residents' priorities and opinions in a scientifically valid way that really represented, according to your census breakdown, kind of an accurate reflection of opinion and thought. Next slide. Ended up being a 7-page survey, which was a little longer than we originally talked about, but your staff did a great job of promoting this. And so we ended up getting 10% more response than we originally thought we would, or what our target was. So we ended up with 330 responses. It gives us a plus or minus 5.4%, 95% confidence level. What does all that mean? Well, any of the surveys that you see, quite typically political surveys or other surveys reflected in the news media, there's always going to be that margin of error, that plus or minus, and plus or minus 5% is in line with that standard. Next slide. So the bottom line up front, residents have a very positive perception of the park and recreation facilities and programs. There's a lot of information. Enlarge this a little bit. There we go. 88% of the residents rated the physical condition of Littleton's parks and recreation facilities as excellent or good. That is a really high number and a high confidence, level of confidence coming from your residents. But 88% rated it as excellent or good. 75% were very satisfied with the maintenance and upkeep of the town's parks, trails, fields, and open spaces. And 93% rated the overall quality of programs in which their household participated as excellent or good. Usage in various areas of your park system are very high. The highest we'll see, and we'll go through some of these slides later, but this is just kind of concluding what you're going to hear later. The highest investment priorities based on priority investment ratings were outdoor concerts and performing arts and adult health and fitness classes. And again, we're going to elaborate more on these as we go through. Next slide. So major finding number 1, residents have a positive perception of Littleton Parks, facilities, and programs. Next slide. So we asked the question, have members of your household visited any of the town of Littleton's parks or recreation facilities during the past year? In fact, 84% indicated that they had, and only 16% said no, they had not. That is a huge number. I think that really shows that you're getting the word out, you have a good reputation, positive perception in the community. Next slide. Oh, this one. So approximately how often did members of your household visit park systems? So you kind of see a breakdown, but more than half of the respondents visited your parks and recreation facilities at least a few times a month. Next slide. Overall, how would you rate the physical condition of all of the town of Littleton's parks and recreation, Littleton Park recreation facilities that you visited? So that's specifically asking about the ones that they knew about, that they actually spent time visiting, and you see overall the residents gave extremely high ratings, either excellent or good, for about 80, almost 90% of the respondents. Next slide. We asked them, please rate your satisfaction with maintenance and upkeep of the various facilities, parks, trails, fields, and open spaces. You can see again, very high ratings. Next slide. Major finding number 2 was the usage and satisfaction with the town's parks and facilities are high. Next slide. I'm not going to attempt to go through all of these, but you can see it in either online or you can see it in the written form. This sort of you have a few out there at the top of Long Lake and next slide. But back there, it was Long Lake Beach and Swimming, 300 King Street Park, Castle and Trees Playground, and a few other playgrounds there that rated really high. This question dealt with satisfaction with following parks and recreation facilities. And here, again, the dark blue is very satisfied, the light blue is satisfied, the gray is neutral, and then the red or pinkish color is dissatisfied. And so for purposes kind of making it a little bit harder to impress, you might say, we combined those. So we treated somewhat dissatisfied and very dissatisfied as one color, and that in the pink area. One thing I would tell you though, from the experience of working with a lot of communities, when we do these type of questions, and people end up kind of chasing the red and think, well, we're going to turn around public opinion, and that ought to be where we focus our efforts, is really improving or enhancing some of those areas. Now, in Parks and Recreation, you do have that opportunity a little bit more to do a pure assessment of the fields. And remember, a lot of the people responding actually used your facilities. So I would say for parks, it's probably more often that could be accurate. You could improve some fields and really enhance the overall ratings. But in general, what we'll look at a lot of times is the gray area, the neutral. And what really I would tell you there is you might be making improvements to some of these fields, but people don't know about it. So, or you might be able to just communicate items a little bit differently or more broadly to get the word out about your different facilities. Because for people to kind of go and they go on to take the survey and they have a neutral response, they came to have an opinion and then didn't have an opinion because they're just kind of neutral. So 27, though, of the 32 park facility categories showed satisfaction ratings of higher than 50%. That's very laudable. Next slide. Long Beach, Lake Beach, and swimming area use were the most used during the year. And you can kind of see, this is, we asked it a little bit differently. We asked for the respondents to rate their first, second, third, and fourth choices. And you can see that Long Lake Beach and swimming area, and again, 300 King Street Park Castle and the Trees Playground rated the highest, and also significantly higher as first choice. So the dark green color in this is their first choice. Next slide. Now we're going to focus on the need and support for facilities and amenities. Basically, try to identify those areas of significant need and level of support should the town decide to pursue funding for some of these particular programs. Next slide. Again, we rated a whole host of different items here, and then the next slide, I believe, might be a continuation of this. This shows very clearly, though, that households have a need for the following facilities. The greatest need is for paved walking path, track, and park shelters and picnic spaces. Those top two items. But closely behind are bathrooms and changing areas and outdoor fitness areas. Next slide. So you can see here, this is just a continuation of the options that they had, but all of these areas rated lower than the previous page. You'll see that again. This next slide, we have support for town funding for the building, renovation, or expansion of facilities and amenities.
Cricket?
And at the top was cricket fields, paved walking path and track, and commercial kitchen, and aquatic facility, leisure pool. Now this means residents will be supportive of funding for these particular amenities for which their household has a need. So they've identified in responses that they think there's a need for those particular areas, and they're willing to support that. And really, across the board, there's not a whole lot of dissent where people are saying no, they'd be not supportive. Next slide. And again, you're going to see additional items here for support for levels of funding. Some, now overall, we combined the two, very supportive and supportive. You see that pump track and mountain biking trails kind of are at the top. But if you look halfway down, aquatic facility and dive well, almost 2/3 of your residents, well 57%, were very supportive of that particular item. Next slide. Again, paved walking path, track, dog park, and aquatic facility are the most important to households. We asked them to rate their top three choices, and you can see again, paved walking path and track rated the highest, dog park was the second. Next slide. This is a continuation of options they could choose, again, from the previous slide. All of these rated lower overall than the items on the previous page. Next slide. So then we look at what we call a priority investment rating, PIR analysis for programs and events. Next slide. So what this looks at were questions they asked about, is there unmet need? Is there a desire for programs of things that you would use, your family would use, where there's an unmet need, a need not being met currently by our facilities? And outdoor concerts and performing arts, this is for programs and events. So previously we were looking at more facilities. So kind of make that distinction here, we segued over to programs and events. And at the top is outdoor concerts and performing arts, adult health and fitness classes, and cultural events. Next slide. Again, this is a continuation of the previous slide, and all of these items are going to rate lower than those on the previous slide. But I think it's important because even if you look at something and it might be youth sports programs or preschool programs or family dances, those can be very important to a particular population group, but maybe overall don't stack up compared to some of the other options. Next slide. This time we're looking again for mostly here we have primarily adult health and fitness classes and outdoor concerts, performing arts that are the most important to residents. If you look at the top four, I think 3 of the 4 are all have adult in the title in terms of the type of programming. Next slide. And again, these are the remainder of the options that were given. Next slide, top priorities, and we try to rate those. So which of those programs that had a high priority of 100 plus? You see outdoor concerts and performing arts, adult health and fitness classes, adult art classes, adult special interest classes, and then cultural events. A medium priority, there's quite a few there that kind of fall under that medium priority, but they're quite a bit behind. So if you're looking at prioritizing your investments and your future direction of programs, these areas in red would be the ones that the residents are saying would be the top priorities. Top priorities for investment programs based on priority investment ratings continued here. Again, these are it's kind of showing this information in a little bit different way. Next slide. We have some other findings, so we asked some other types of questions. We asked what 3 sources are your most preferred ways to learn about parks and recreation programs. And you can see that the printed Park and Recreation Program Guide is the top way. And if you look at first choice, it's by quite a bit. From second place would be around 12 to 15%, and you have 25% of your residents say that their primary first choice way of getting information is through that printed guide. And I would tell you that's not uncommon. Or cities that do a good job of doing either an annual or biannual program guide, printed one, people tend to keep it, they can tend to refer to it, and it's a valuable tool to getting the word out about things that are going on in your park programs. But you also see a program guide online. A lot of people are gravitating in that direction. Maybe not as many as their first choice, but certainly a lot as their second choice would be to go online. Facebook, the town's website, and direct mail and other options kind of fall starkly or quickly behind that. Next slide. Rate your overall satisfaction and the overall value your household receives from the Littleton Parks and Recreation Department. No more than 9% of the residents that responded are dissatisfied with the value that they received from your Parks and Recreation programs. That's a really strong endorsement, positive endorsement. These days when people are really focused on taxes and focused on return on investment, you can be proud to see that 59%, almost 60% of your residents said they're very satisfied or satisfied with the overall value that they receive from your parks department. He asked a question too in a different way, because you can ask about unmet needs and things like that, but we asked a question: if you had a budget of $100 for Littleton Parks and Recreation Department, how would you allocate those funds among the various categories? This was interesting. What it showed was, kind of somewhat surprisingly, at least to me, was that land acquisition for future park, trail, and recreation facility development was 37.49. So over a third of the expenditures that the residents said that they would allocate would be for future amenities to preserve these $20 being spent for improvements to local park amenities, $11.39 improvements to indoor recreation facilities, $14 for improvements to existing outdoor sports complexes, and then building new recreation facilities the town does not have, so actual buildings or facilities, $16. So it's just kind of interesting how people would prioritize that. Next slide. We asked what the maximum length you would travel in order to participate in a Littleton Parks and Recreation program. Nearly half of the respondents would travel 10 to 14 minutes to participate in a program. 35% said they would travel 15 minutes or more. We have good value there and a willingness of people to travel, especially with congestion sometimes these days across the country being an omnipresent issue. You can see people are seeing value in your, again, if you have over a third of the respondents saying that they would travel 15 to 20 minutes or more, that's a compliment to the job you're doing and perception that the residents have. We asked for a level of agreement, either strongly agree, neutral, or disagree, or strongly disagree with this statement, or various statements. It takes a little while to go through these. They're not just one question, but the top line was, is it valuable, the Littleton Parks and Recreation Department, and then we asked them to respond to this, the rest of it, as is a valuable public resource for residents. So you had 88%, again, we highlighted that at the beginning, but 88% of the public said that your parks and rec system is a valuable resource. About the same amount said it enhances the quality of life in Littleton. 83% says it enhances the appeal of living in Littleton to have all these different various programs and facilities. Over 80% that it strengthens community. And really, the highest rating that you had of a disagreement with a statement was, it improves my household's mental health and reduces stress. But you only had 13% that said disagreed with that statement. And you had a fairly significant number as a neutral. But then look at that, you had over half of the respondents said they agree or strongly agree that your programs and what you're doing in your park system is improving their household's mental health and reducing stress. I think whatever you're doing to communicate with the public and to get the word out on various things, they have such a high, as we see here in summary, a positive perception, not only just of being in a program, but from that last slide that it's better for my household's mental health and well-being to participate in Littleton Park and Recreation programs. Yes, 75% were very satisfied or satisfied with the maintenance. 93% rated the overall quality of programs as excellent or good. The high usage areas there we talked about, and then the highest investment priorities being outdoor concerts and performing arts, and adult health fitness classes. I know that's a lot to soak in. I tried to hurry up to hopefully keep everyone's interest here. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Or if you have comments, that's fine too.
Sure, I'll kick it off. I had a couple questions. Although it's obvious that we need a Wilson Aquatic Center, I will say that. But can you the numbers on the number of respondents overall?
Yeah, we had 330 respondents overall.
Okay. And so you were using some pretty good adjectives there to describe a lot of the great programming. I assume you've done this in a lot of other communities. This wasn't specifically tailored to Littleton. This is almost like a templated survey. How do we compare? I would like to have seen, how are we doing as related to some of the communities that you've done?
Sure, I understand. That's certainly something that we can do.
Yeah.
We can provide some of that. There is a lot of this that was, I would say, a significant portion of this was tailored to your specific programs and facilities, so, but to the extent that we can glean some of these questions and give you some benchmarks, I can certainly talk with our folks about doing that.
Thank you.
And there were some of those in the document report, so there's, some comparisons to national averages.
There is. That's what I'd be curious.
There.
Yeah, maybe we try just to get the word out on where those are in the reports, and I can work with Alicia to highlight those.
I have a question. It's not a very well-formed question, but throughout the presentation, the town beach was seen as one of the highest use, highest important areas. And I'm wondering if it's common. I don't have a problem with the parking fee for parking. I do have a serious problem with the walk-on fee, and I'd be curious to know how much the department gets from the walk-on fee. And I'm wondering if it's common for towns to have a fee for the residents to have to walk into the beach. And I have my own reservations about why we're doing this.
So that's not a question that he is able to answer. That has nothing to do with this presentation. However, I'm very happy to answer that for you later on.
Absolutely, thank you. Yep.
One question I had was, I noticed that on the tennis courts, I was surprised by the difference in satisfaction with the high school courts and Shattuck Street courts. And I would have expected that the high school courts would have had a higher rating than the ratty old Shattuck Street courts. And I just didn't understand, was it because not very many people use the high school courts?
I bet that's it.
Did you get a sense?
Yeah.
Well, I was just surprised at that because, it didn't make,
I mean,
that's the only thing that sort of jumped out at me. It just didn't make sense.
enormous amount of seniors use that.
Yeah.
Courts.
The reality is I think the public views the ones here at Shattuck Street as those are the public courts, the ones that are accessible to everyone else, and that the high school are seen as school courts. So yes, there is a difference between the usage in them.
As residents, are we allowed just to use the high school courts?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, I never knew that.
Okay, it just, that was the one thing that sort of.
Sorry
jumped
about
out at
that,
me.
except during tennis season. Thank you.
They're only out there a couple hours.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. It was the only thing that really kind of didn't make sense to me. Okay. Thank you.
So I had a question about cricket. Can we go back to where that came up earlier in the presentation? I think it came up as both the least wanted and the most likely to be invested in, or most likely to be wanted to be invested in, and I was hoping you could help us sort of reconcile how those two seemingly disparate results.
Our booming English population.
Not so much about cricket, but like what type of profile, wants something, doesn't want something, but is more likely to invest in it.
I don't know if somebody on your end is trying to find that slide, but I can tell you sometimes that's why you want to compare and contrast different questions, because on the face of it, it might say I'm very dissatisfied with something, and we don't have any of it. But at the same time, is it the most important item to me? No, it's not necessarily. And so what we look at is a importance satisfaction rating, an overall rating. That's why we try to look at some of these numbers in different prisms to kind of bear that out.
So this wasn't so much about satisfaction, it was about desire for the facility versus willingness to invest in the facility.
Yeah.
Which I would have thought would have a higher level of correlation.
So Karen, I think this slide is showing for those that identified, like, so the 2% of people that identified they wanted cricket, that 2% is super supportive of funding it, right? But this is like, I think the slide is the residents, percentage of residents that are supporting it, that identified that specific item as a need, right?
So can you confirm that?
I can work with your staff to try to confirm that.
This is what the title says on the slide.
It makes sense, but.
I mean, yeah, it makes it rises.
So there's only 2% that want it, but that 2% is really.
They want it very badly. I can tell you that much.
We get like 1 or 2 calls a week about building.
We do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Looking for donations.
They're just saying.
I guess I have one question. I mean, I know like how important it was, for your organization to have this and really validate the investment of the town. So I'm curious, like, was there an eye opener that came? Was there like an aha moment or something really surprising in this? And the day you got back that.
Not really. I mean, and that's kind of the point that one of the main reasons that we felt like we needed to do this is that, we've seen these trends happen throughout the years, and we wanted to be able to have that certainty in that what we were seeing and what we were reflecting back was the actuality of what the community is asking for. So I don't think there's anything, I don't know if you have anything that super surprises you.
I think the biggest piece is, obviously we're talking finance and stuff tonight, but when we look at this and the budget of Park and Recreation and how much is coming, being funded through programming and hopefully building the revolving fund and a reserve in the future to continue to help, move some of this stuff forward. It really helps us, to look at it and say, okay, we're going to invest in a project, we're going to utilize CPC funds, and at the end of the day, we're here at the behest of the residents, and to see their goals come to fruition and see their goals met is basically our charge in everything that all of us do, and to know that, well, all right, when we look at this and we're going to invest X number of dollars, let's invest it in something that people really want. And now we know also which facilities people are utilizing, which facilities that we can not only improve that already exist, but what should we be looking at in the next 5 to 10 years when we look at capital improvements, when we look at those kind of things. This gives us that roadmap, and this is, statistically valid. This is essentially what 95% of the community is looking for when it comes to putting this forth. So whether that's, capital, whether that's funding out of the general fund, or whether that's something that, we're possibly able to create through programming fees, through, usage fees, or capital funds, or rec, reserve fund in the future, that helps us, and, we can really say, okay, this is what we're going to do with that money.
I have a question on on the statistics behind some of this. For example, if I got the survey and I didn't check anything for one of these boxes, preschool, daycare, right? How is my result tabulated? Am I neutral, or am I taken out of the 339 and now there's only 329 answering these? What happens if someone didn't answer a question?
Well, that can happen, and you may have situations where there's a number of people who are skipping a question. It doesn't invalidate the overall.
No. My question is what happened, so for all of these numbers here, 330 people had an opportunity to weigh in. Are 330 people reflected in all of these results, or some of them were only 2 results? There's 2 people that want a cricket court, or 4 people that want cricket in town. They strongly want cricket, and no one else checked yes, no, or indifferent. Right? How do you know, is the same number reflected on all of these?
It's a percentage. What is the percentage?
Well, we have, in the backup materials that we provided with the report, there's a breakout for each question, so you can actually look up a particular question and see how many people answered each.
Okay.
Each option. So that's in the larger report. This is just a summary presentation of the overall findings report. There's a section called cross tabulations and breakout that'll break out each question, how many people responded. We certainly wouldn't want to have it paint that type of a picture where 1 or 2 people really want it. This is based on the number of people that responded. The people that said they were very supportive
groups?
Oh, you dropped out.
Every 18 minutes or longer than that.
That's their top priority. In fact, only 1% listed that as one of the more important items that they had. So I'm happy to break down any additional information that might shed light on this question. And
I think tonight, this meets through, this is a great information, and we see, now I see the backup information that we can get our hands on it as we look to the future. But this was a good overall presentation of what what you guys.
Well, and if I could just clarify to the previous question, comment, it's not that 330 people had the chance. This was sent out to a much larger segment of the population. That's just how many people actually responded.
Right. I understand. That wasn't my question.
Right. If you go back, I mean, to the previous slide, go back to the one that starts with cricket. Right. I mean, if I look at this, I would say that okay, the top items, the most popular: aquatic facility, preschool, markers, spacers, aquatic pool, and cricket. But I can't tell if that's how many people answered that. So I feel like this is giving me a certainty that isn't there.
You just have to cross-reference.
Again, in large part, people are responding. Most of the people are going to respond to all of these different categories. There may be some instances where some just pick up the pen and say this is too long, and I don't want to stick with it. But that was what I just explained. With the larger report, there's information there that breaks out, how many people actually responded to each question.
So, yeah, I think to the question you're both asking is that, we do have to take this with the number of people that were interested. That's not your priority list.
Thank you. Right. I do data analysis. That's my day job, and I can't analyze.
Well, what's interesting about this particular slide too is what's your level of support for the town funding expansion of some of these? Well, it may not be very important to me, but I'd be okay with spending money doing all of these if people think it's important. And you look at it almost across the board. Cricket fields may be the overall top because you had people saying they would be either very supportive or supportive, but essentially the highest level of disagreement with any of these is about 2% for additional tennis courts. And fishing dock at Long Lake. Other than that, I mean, you pretty much had super strong response in terms of I'd be supportive of funding that. Now, they're not necessarily making a choice or how they're going to pay for that, but I'd be okay if you spend more money to do more cricket fields, even though I may not use them or may not want them, but I'd be okay. I'd be supportive of that effort. And I think if you look at the overall value that the residents are saying that they are deriving from it, they derive a value to the overall community by having these amenities, and it's not necessarily important to them or their household, but they see the value that these types of programs and facilities, how that translates to the overall perception of the community as a place where people want to work and live and recreate. So
I don't think anybody disagrees.
I think this overview was fantastic. It really was. It gave us I think this is probably one of those things that we would like to see back when, in one of our, maybe even a joint meeting, or not, in front of the select board, a presentation after we've really dug in and looked at that. Maybe we have questions. Maybe bring you back, or you guys will probably be able to help us. This, as far as budget goes, I think this is a good picture of, like you had said, Tim, it is what we're looking at, the longer term plan, just to get in our heads what potentially could be coming down the road, the needs of the community and wants of the community. So,
is the full data available somewhere?
It is.
Yeah, they have it. That's why I said it. Let's not.
Yep.
I think the presentation.
No, yeah, I'm just asking if we can see the rest of it.
Does the full data have any information about who completed the survey? Were they?
It's all anonymous. So, I mean, Robert, you can speak more to that. And if you want to talk about the statistic validity component of it.
Just
Well, in
wondering-
terms of, ETC, in order to have any credibility and have people fill out the surveys, we're never going to say, okay, this is how this individual resident at this individual address responded. We can reduce it down to the block level, but that's the lowest that we'll go. Our business depends on people feeling like they can freely express their opinions and, without retribution or any other type of feedback.
No, I was just more thinking like, that it's a resident, tax-paying resident versus a 10-year-old and, one email address versus, 40 from somebody who wants, whatever. I just was curious as to what kind of qualifiers you have.
So they weed all that stuff out, but Robert, you can,
Okay.
speak to that more if you wish.
Kind of demographics.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't really hear that.
So
interchange.
all the data he mentioned at the beginning, and there is a very clear thing at the beginning of the thing. It's all based off of our census data from the most recent census, and based off of that, in order to make it statistically valid, they take a sample of the population as a whole, and they distribute those surveys so that they meet each criteria within the census data. And through that, just so everybody's aware, the Parks Department, Town of Littleton, we're completely hands-off through the whole process, so there's no tainting of the data. And essentially, if you had received one in the mail and you didn't answer in a certain amount of time, then you get a phone call, hey, did you happen to see this? Can you please fill it out? And then ETC chased all that down for us until they got to the rate of what made it within their system of statistically valid.
Thank you.
That's a good thing for you.
So, as far as the next steps go, the commissioners and the staff going through the data and coming up with a game plan, or a roadmap that's going to share with the two boards.
Yep, and that's part of, that kind of rolls into, when we do our presentation tonight, we'll talk about the goals for the department, and that is one of them is to review this document to create that strategic plan toward the future to figure out what are we able to do, what do we want to invest in, and looking at different funding opportunities for all of these items. Because, obviously, one of the things that came up there was that there was a lot of support for land purchases, right? Because we honestly don't have a whole lot of space to be able to build some of these facilities. So, it's a very long sort of conversation to be able to get to that path where we can create a strategic plan and move forward. So, yes, absolutely.
Well, let's roll into your budget. You're next.
Do you guys have any other questions or anything?
If I might just comment on the tail of what you just said, Alicia, quite frequently our surveys for parks and recreation will be in concert with an effort to do a long-term park master plan or master plan update. And it's just really good to have that public opinion, that sense, and as was said before, a statistically valid survey, so that you're not just anecdotally hearing from a squeaky wheel in the community, but you're looking at it in context of the overall. I would also say that it's tempting sometimes to read too much maybe into a report like this, when really the most value is probably to say this is a picture in time. This is just a snapshot right now of the perception that residents have, and those perceptions can be changed, or we can build future direction and investment based on those perceptions as they exist today. But strongly encourage you to see the value in over time, where most of our clients end up coming back. You can come back in a year, but honestly, it's tough to affect significant change in 1 year. Most of our clients will come back and do a follow-up every other year, just so they can kind of see, okay, we're going to kind of define what path we're going to be on and some initiatives within, maybe before we go back to the voters or back to the community in different ways to look at a new initiative. We're going to have some updated data to see how we move the needle in some of these areas where people are not very satisfied with what we're doing. So I just kind of wanted to say that to kind of keep that in mind in context, where how we view it is really this is a picture in time. It doesn't answer all the questions, and say in case sometimes it means we need to do more outreach to get more information because the response has surprised us in some way. But there's still value in the data And we'll be, in touch with your staff if there's follow-up that we, need to do, or areas where you would like us to continue to help define, or report back. We're happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Welcome. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
He's still there. All right. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll roll in for fiscal year 25 budget.
Page 164, if anybody.
164.
All right. So, going through the template that we had, obviously major accomplishments that we've had in this past year. One of the biggest that we've had is navigating that transition from an enterprise fund over to a 53E&a-half revolving and general fund blend. That's definitely taken a year of very in-depth work to be able to get that to that place, and so luckily we are there. So we are officially over onto our revolving and general funds. We did completely do the renovation and moved our department over to 41 Chatham Street. I have to take the opportunity to thank my staff because 90% of those renovations were done by all of those hands. So internally, our department created that. So I have to give them mad props for that because it's amazing. It's, extremely important for our community to have access to that, and it's obviously very much being used. So we were able to obtain a $42,000 grant from United Way for our after-school program that really helped us get that started back up. Since COVID, it had kind of dwindled away, so we really needed that financial backing to be able to get that program going, and it's extremely successful. So, we've got anywhere between 20 to 40 kids there every day after school. So it's amazing how much that's helped. We completed the statistically needs recreational study. That was something we've been trying to get completed for 2 years. So finally being able to get that completed and over the finish line to get those results is extremely important for us to be able to plan moving forward in the future. We developed that design for the high school tennis court and worked with public schools to be able to come up with an idea for a renovation for 36 King. Obtained the funding for the high school court project, and we are almost, we will be having, I believe, our final meeting for open space on Thursday night. So hopefully that will close out that plan. And I've mentioned it a few times throughout the year. A majority of our summer programs were completely sold out. So that is something, our staff goes back to the drawing board and trying to figure out, how can we expand that? How are we going to meet those goals to ensure that people have the support that they need throughout the school year and summer. So, yeah.
If I could just on that last one.
Sure.
Have you come up with a conclusion? Is it a staffing potential shortfall, or is it a time that you just can't fit enough in? What is?
Oh, no, that's a great question. So it's honestly space. So with Camp T, I'll use that as an example because that's our bread and butter program that we have. We typically, in the past, we were taking in around like 150 kids per week. Yeah. So this past summer, we went up to 180, 190 per week. So for us, that was the max that we were able to get into the space that we use in the schools. We could potentially do more, but obviously not with the space that we have. And the way that we approach staffing is that we have a 10-to-1 ratio. So if we end up getting increased number of children, then we have to increase the staffing. That also increases the expenditures that we have too. So all of those things, that's something that we keep on top of that and do what we need to.
I think just one thing to piggyback on that, and working with Steve Marks, we do it all the time, is as an example, this year summer camp ends on August 2nd because that's when we're out of the schools. So, to the space point, that's really our biggest holdup. And, for those 190 hours a week that, we no longer have a place to home, that their parents could use
3 more weeks.
funding for 3 more weeks, childcare and everything else for 3 more weeks. That's really kind of detrimental to not only the parents and the children in the community, but our department, because we can't continue that service that's so heavily relied upon. And a lot of it just has to do with there's just no time to get the maintenance done in order for the schools to move forth in a timely manner.
All right, so department goals. So these are something that, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the department work on together. We usually take a few months to go through these and decide what these are going to be. So ultimately, these are the top ones that we have looked into for fiscal year 23. So the first part of, as we mentioned earlier, using the statistically valid recreational needs survey to develop that 7-year strategic plan for the department. So that strategic plan obviously will address the needs for any parks and facility improvements, creation of the new playing field, essentially a lot of the things that we're requesting on request and through CPC from now through 2030. All right, so this next part, the development of that financial strategy to support that funding mechanism. This is a really important piece for us because we want to be able to provide what the community is asking, but we also understand that there's a large financial burden, right, that comes with that, and that's extremely important to figure out how we can do that in a fiscally responsible way. So, looking into the possibilities of grants to be able to lessen that. Additionally, one of the things that we've talked about previously when I presented the goals in June was that we want to focus on being able to try to create a reserve for the department. And this being the very first year that we have been on the revolving and general fund blend, we're not obviously there yet. You can't amass a ton of money to be able to get to this point, but ultimately we want to be able to encumber any issues that we may have. So a perfect example is in fiscal year we had a revenue in the revolving of around $1,272,000, right? We had wages and expenditures of about $1 million, almost $100. So that leaves us with a cushion about $172,000, right? So our department operates on a seasonal path, if you will. So what that means is we receive those receipts and the revenues 3 to 6 months prior to our programs running. And we're usually still paying wages and invoices a month or two after the programs end, right? So it's not immediately happening. There's definitely this curve that happens throughout the year. So being able to have that sort of cushion helps us for things. So this past year, if you guys will go back and think about our wonderful rainy summer that we had, it drastically affected our beach. We ended up being $41,000 in the negative because we were not able to bring in the money that we normally would do to be able to cover all of those expenses and wages. However, knowing that we have that surplus that's coming from our programs, we're able to absorb that and not have to ask for, any additional funds to handle those sort of situations. So, ultimately, those are the places that we're trying to get. Going through everything that we went through with COVID, that's another situation where it is imperative for us to be able to create that reserve so that, again, we are being fiscally responsible and that we're able to take care of our staff and the programs and be able to be respectful of our residents' funds. So that's an extremely important goal for us to be able to get there. So I know that's something Steve and I have talked about this, and something that we're looking on what our path is to be able to do that in the most effective way. And again, as mentioned in the statistically valid study, we're working to be able to provide those facilities and programs that the residents are wanting. And you know, the one piece that kind of sticks out with the number 3 there is, as I had mentioned before, identifying and potentially obtaining any parcels, right? That's a huge point of being able for us to even start a project. So being able to know that we have a place to put these different facilities that folks are asking for if they need homes. All right, so the last one that we have here is, you know, completing the projects that we have on the table. We've had a lot of different projects that are in various states of hold. So, you know, having the select board's help, Fincom's help to be able to support these and move forward. You know, tennis courts, luckily we've got all the funding that we needed for that, so we will be able to complete that. But we do have to come up with a solution for things like athletic fields. I just wanted to mention it, not spend a long time on it, but there are quite a few bills at the State House that are referencing turf fields and the ability to not build turf fields moving forward in the future. So from the last time I think I spoke to you guys, they had 1 bill, now there's 5. So this is something that as a community, we're truly gonna have to have conversations and think about this moving forward. And you know, being able to have access to grass fields is one way that we can eliminate some of those issues in the future. All right, next slide, please.
Actually, before you go on, I'm just, and guessing you're going to, well, anyway, is anybody looking at resolving the use of the field behind St. Anne's?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
Okay.
somebody has that handled.
The short answer is,
on it.
Brian, I've sent about 6 emails and we haven't gotten any response back. So we have opened up some other channels. We are working on that continuously.
That's all I needed. I trust you all. Just, it's like, there's a field sitting there.
All right, so moving forward for our fiscal year 25 capital requests. So the first one that we have has been on the capital request since 2022. It is something for as far as maintenance goes, we're supposed to resurface basketball fields courts every 5 years. Because of COVID and not having people accessing them for a while, we were able to kind of push that out a little bit further. But we have gotten to the place now where the cracks, as you can see, are getting a bit larger. So we really do need to address this and be able to get those courts resurfaced. On the positive side, the estimated quote that we had was the $55,000 that we saw up there. Our current quote that we have is closer to $35,000, which is great, right? And so we still have to get 2 more bids coming in, but that's a really positive thing to see that the estimation in this is it's going to be less. That's always good. Our second one that we have is, this is a request based off of the 2017 field need study. It was an estimate that a new field creation would cost about $2.5 million. Further discussion on our current fields, especially with Schaefer Lane and some of the school fields, needs to be discussed because we have to figure out, is the appropriate action to create new fields, or is it to reorganize what we currently have to be able to maximize the space efficiently? So as it is currently, that is an estimation. However, this is something that, you know, we really do need to be able to kind of move forward and figure out what the ultimate goal is going to be for these fields so that we can start creating some of the solutions.
If I can just push on that a little bit. So it's not really for design of a new field. It's more for figuring out the overall picture.
It's a combination, right? So ultimately, we already have the idea and some concepts that came from the 2017 Fields Master Plan. This would be looking at, do we want to create one of those fields, right? Which we do already have some plans for. Or do we want to reconfigure? Does it make more sense for us to use the money on reconfiguring what we already have or creating something new?
Right, because
but it ultimately would create a design, yes.
Okay, great. Just because I live, stone's throw from Shaker Lane, and there's the backfield that, I almost never see used, and it's like, again.
Because the drainage is horrific out there. It's wet all the time. It hardly gets used. Yep. Okay. And the last one that we have on here is the requested amount for the can dock materials. So this is something, we partially completed this in 2019. So if you go out to the beach, there's already a dock there that houses the sailboats in the summertime. So the rest of this amount would be able to create the dock that we used to have in the middle. So that would separate the swim boxes, Zone 1 and Zone 2. And will allow us to be able to create an area for fishing that helps to separate the fishing activity from the swim box, because we try desperately to keep those things separately. The last thing we want is fish hooks in anybody's feet, right? So we would like to be able to create a space for the fisher folk to be, if you will. So laugh at me. Just so they have a space and they're not trying to struggle to find a location around the lake, because it's not really that easy to do, unless you have a boat.
So before we move on in general, I'd like to say something on the new field. I don't know that we should be spending the money on the field at this point. I think we should push it off until after we know what's going on with Shaker Lane, whether we're going to be using the existing site, the existing building, moving it somewhere else. Wait to see what's going on with the sewer. If they're doing an expansion, it's a natural place to put another field. When they put in another leach field, I agree that we need new fields, but I think this one's a little premature for all the other projects going on until we can kind of line them all up.
Plus the legislation.
That's just my...
Okay.
I agree.
What's the time window on those?
Well, Shaker Lane will have something end of the year-ish.
Is she looking at me?
I think the sewer is a 3 to 5 year project, is what they were saying at their last meeting.
Phase 2.
For phase 2, so.
We're looking at December 2025 until we have some idea in terms of the design and location.
I think the other piece to be mindful of is not to run into the situation that we ran in with the tennis courts.
Right.
So we created the structure and we didn't have a backup plan for the tennis courts. If we come up with funding for design, we can do those two things concurrently. So as we're designing a new school building, or we're designing a leach field, to your point, or whatever it might be, that can go into the plan, it can go into construction cost, it can go into other things that, if you're doing those things concurrently, then we don't come up at a shortfall later and say, oh, how do we plan for tennis courts? And now we're out having X for a year, 2 years, while we're trying to then plan on the backside.
Right, I agree.
Which we would have.
Yeah, I agree we should do that. I just think it's a little, it would make no sense to spend a lot of money rehabbing the Shaker Lane field, only to turn out we're going to build a new school there, right? Or something like that. So I agree we need to do it, and we should be on top of it. I just think it's we're a little too on top of it. We're a little in front of it right now. That's just my opinion.
All right. So the next slide is the projected for 25 through 29. So again, most of these things are items that you saw in that statistically valid recreational needs survey. Additionally, these items are referenced in the Open Space and Recreation Plan 2016 and the current 2023. let's see here. We've already sort of discussed the design for King Street. That's something that's been on the capital plan. I know we talked about the pickleball courts as something that's a potential add-in. We were kind of on the fence about, do we ask for that this year as we're going through and looking into being able to update that site, but ultimately in discussions with Ryan and with Robin, we decided that it made sense to put that off for a year before, so we can ultimately make that decision of what 36 King is going to look like. So that is something that will be coming up in the future. Our pool that we have on here, this is something, it's been on the capital plan again since 2022. This is the third most wanted facility in that statistically valid recreational needs study. It's something we've heard a lot from the public about wanting this. The requests for this facility increase every year. Majority of phone calls that we get in this reference are specifically wanting to be able to get lessons for their children to be able to learn how to swim. One of the things that we have seen since COVID and the lifeguard shortage is that there has been a lack of children learning how to swim and also more incidents of drownings or near drownings that have happened in Massachusetts. So it is truly something that is important for children to be able to learn that skill in life.
I know one thing you talked about in the past, which I think for the pool, I think you've done some research around like a revenue model for that too, right? So like it's not just a cost, right? But
no, and that's the important thing to think about with a lot of these specific facilities that come with recreation. There is a revenue model that comes with that, right? You don't necessarily get that from a library or, I'll throw the dog park out there because that's not something, I'm not going to charge someone to go to use the dog park, but a community pool is a way to be able to bring in money to the community and to be able to continue to maintain that building and that facility as time goes on through those fees, similar to what we do at the lake. Okay. All right, so dog park, again, this is the fourth highest that was, second highest that was listed on that list. I know that there's actually individuals in the public that have started groups to be able to try to fundraise to create a dog park. This is one of those places of, where do you put it? So that is one of the questions to be able to answer with that. But as, both of these things being highly rated on the statistically valid needs study, as well as them being in, like I said, the open space plans, this is something that we'll look into where we can do this and how we can be able to fund them moving forward in the future. And then the last that we have on there is the renovation for Fay Park. This is something we've been talking about since 2016. There's a lot to it. We need to look at parking. One of those things that was consistently asked for was walking paths, things like that. So, and an outdoor venue, right? That was one of the big ones that was up there too. So to be able to create some sort of pavilion or like a music amphitheater out there would be obviously not like the band shell in Boston. We're not looking at something like that, but something for us to be able to house something under a roof, obviously, to not have to deal with the weather at sometimes. So, yeah.
Just to kind of add on to that too.
Yeah.
When we talk about land acquisition and things of that nature, I think a majority of you came to Oktoberfest and saw how successful it was on the IBM property front lawn compared to Fay Park. So, looking at renovating Fay Park, it could also be something like looking at renovating / purchasing another property that fits that bill a little better in order for us to move forward with those type of events that there's ample parking, there's more room, there's room for walking trails and, building all those things together.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll get into the operating budgets, the requests. So we're dealing with the same general fund requests that we've had the last year, year before. So no big changes here. It's all pretty standard. So one of the things that we had requested, so these are the amounts that we have requested. If you want, Ryan, let's go to, yeah, that's perfect. So this gives you the table of what our original request was, and through our conversations with Ryan and Robin, what the changes have ultimately come out to be. So for staffing, we did request that we have the salary and benefits of the director, the assistant director, and our office coordinator to be covered. The office coordinator position is one of those where their main job is to be doing basically data entry for payroll, for the AP packets, for P-card statements, all of those things, the cash, check, and credit card turnover. So all of those things assist the administration of our department. So ultimately, that's why we will be requesting that, because we have the revolving fund, anything related to our programming. So our program coordinators, they're a perfect example of that, and our seasonal staff, all of that comes out of our revolving fund. So in the discussion for that, the 30,000 was taken out to have that. Which I understand, you know, with trying to make up this deficit that we have, so I understand that.
So just for Ryan, what the number in the book says 263 and that says 252, so I'm not sure where the 11,000 number difference is.
They might have, yeah, we'll check on that. We have moved Kelsey up to a program coordinator. So we are hiring for an office coordinator, which would then set that back down to step 1. So that's a possibility of what the difference was. Yeah.
Longevity, how do you lose longevity?
Right. So it's my understanding that, like, with HR, with the handbook that we have for employees, that longevity would be covered under the general fund, and if that's not the case. So the 1,400 would be covering myself and Tim. The 700 would be for John Kazanjian, who's a programming coordinator. So I'm assuming that's not, that it would be coming out of the revolving rather than the operating, or sorry, checkoff fund.
Thank you.
Yep. Utilities, that's something, again, I made the same statement last year, that if we're going to, water is the major cost that we incur. So if this is something where, you know, we are going to actually install the wells that we've talked about, which we didn't do last year, so hopefully this year we'll be able to do that.
I can give an update on that too. So I talked to Steve about that. So the hope is to do it this spring. So that'll be for Kerper, and which I think is the reason for the discount here.
Right.
And then the other one being the town center. So common. So you'll see that. So this might even be able to go down further than that. So but right, the water's the big bill.
Right.
Are there more wells that you're looking to get?
We'll take as many as we can get.
It's not every field.
But it ends up being something as a project that DPW does, and I think it costs them between 10 to 20,000. Do you remember, Tim? With the, I don't know if you do.
It's over 20,000. The only question I did have is, when we were running these, did we take into consideration that the high school fields were offline last summer, and we did not use the water,
the irrigation
number that we were shooting for? I just would like to double check that, because we didn't use any water up there last year, and if we were going off the fiscal year's numbers from last year, it would be very inaccurate.
So the budget for last year was the 25,000. So the budget is, it's flat at 25.
The numbers in the slide book match, it's just that total's wrong, right? If you add them up, it's 63, right? It's the total line from.
Oh, okay.
It's all good.
All right, and then the last component on there is the 25 for special events. All right, so Ryan, if you want to go. So the last question on here was, what do we project for operating needs? Obviously, I would like to be able to get to that place where we could fully fund that office coordinator position. I think that would be beneficial. It's just one of those additional costs that allows us to keep our programming low, which is part of our mission statement. So that would be extremely helpful. And then moving forward, if we end up moving into 36 King Street, just being cognizant of the utilities and some of those operating costs for those additional facilities and cleaning services, because that's something I think was thought of on the back end and some of the other previous builds. So just being out in front of that and having that being part of that full budget. Yeah.
So this probably goes back to you, Ryan, and are the utilities and the cleaning and all of that 436 King in the general facilities budget?
Well, it wouldn't be, because for the most part, it's going to be, it's going to be work doing the renovation, presumably. So, but Alicia's right. This is for those out years for 36 King Street. You're going to see Liz, if she gets her presentation, talking about the senior center.
Yep.
Similar expenses, but for the most part, that really hits into the next fiscal year, by 26. So, but no, that's right. To be able to highlight that would be
right.
That would be real expenses, and Liz will say the same thing.
But when those hit the budget, those won't hit the park and rec budget. Those will hit the general facilities budget.
There will be, we'll have to add it. But it's still good that it's being called out.
Yeah.
Because it is, while not a direct hit necessarily to the parks and rec budget, it's something we need to account for.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess just one other one. So just the way, I would request too, the way you wrote it kind of for additional facilities. I know you guys have done like an awesome job of growing programs in the space you had, right? But I mean, some of the things you've done, like the after school program and the indoor playground and all that, does that all still fit at 36, or is it a blend of,
Yeah, I mean, it's a blend of space right now, to be quite honest. That's where I kind of come back to my soapbox of the strategic planning, and that's something that we really need help from all of you so that we can figure out what some of these paths are and how long we're going to have spaces to be able to use and when we need to be able to switch over to those other ones.
And I know like PMBC is going to be out of 36 King, but it's just, I know like your space needs today probably aren't identical to what they were 2 years back, right?
100%, and it does keep growing every year.
Tyler, I think a perfect example is, over at 36 King Street, if we don't need to spend a significant amount of money to renovate the basement to move the teen center there, but could instead utilize the space that we currently have while we try to come up with what might be a better plan, that would be ideal to help us move, some of this down the fiscal road into saying, okay, we can do this. We don't necessarily have to do this right now, because that space over there is absolutely amazing and it's in better walking distance. There's all sorts of things that go into taking into consideration for that program that also help us when we're talking about what actual money needs to go into 36 King Street.
Thanks.
Anything else for Alicia?
Just in the interest of time, maybe you could answer my previous question by email about the beach fees.
Absolutely, sure. If you have specifics, please, you can send those to me first, and then I can make sure if there's any specific information you need, I have all of that data for you.
Great, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It is also on our agenda for the next Park and Rec meeting.
That's a lot, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah.
Next up is Liz, page 148, Elder and Human Services. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you.
Good evening. Hi.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. I think I've met all of you, but again, I'm Liz Trudiak, Director of Elder and Human Services. So typically what I like to do at budget time, I like to jump right in and shine the spotlight on the Elder and Human Services Department. We are way past time now, so I will try to go through it kind of quickly. What you see on the screen right now is what we are currently offering through our department. Not every single thing is listed, but I wanted to just show you the breadth of all the things that we offer right now. Who we are a department of 4 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff person, and 3 van drivers who are part-time. On average, we see between 43 to 50 people per day. Our busiest days are Mondays. There are currently about 2,600-ish seniors in town right now. We generally see about 10% of those seniors at the current time. And for overall who we see, 70% of our patrons are over 60 and the 30% are under 60 because we do serve all ages in town.
Could you go over each one of those bullets for us?
I can list it all out and send you our newsletter.
It's a very impressive list.
Thanks. One thing that we love to do in our department, or I love to do and my staff might like to do, is keep track of our data and log everything that we do. Every interaction that we have with a resident is logged. Phone calls, emails, walk-ins, we try to capture everything. So what you see on the screen right here is how many people we saw duplicated and unduplicated. This is a 14% increase in unduplicated people over FY22. And what that means is unduplicated means if Chuck came in to see me, I would count him once. If he came in every week, he'd still only be counted once. Duplicated is I'd count him 7 times. So that's the difference between duplicated and unduplicated. Just to give you an example, for fuel assistance, we had 126 residents come in 2023 looking for fuel assistance, and our outreach coordinators and other staff logged 612 interactions with those folks. So everything that we do takes multiple times to be completed. So on average, someone would have to either speak with us or consult with us 4 times for a fuel assistance application to actually be complete, be followed up on, and get the service that they need. These things take time. They take a lot of time. It's not easy in social services right now. Next slide. These are the things that we're really proud of right now. Last fiscal year, we delivered 1,456 bags of food to residents in our community from the Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry. We helped deliver 6,275 Meals on Wheels to 71 clients here in Littleton. Our Shine counselor, Shine is serving health insurance needs of everyone. She had 90 in-person appointments to counsel on Medicare, Mass Health, other insurance options. We provided 1,953 van rides, which is a 63% increase over the previous year. I want to have a caveat on that is we're still bouncing back post-COVID. That's a huge increase, but we had no van service in FY21. So we're slowly creeping back up there. We have 15 rental assistance program participants right now with the Affordable Housing Trust. And we had 1,286 different events and activities held throughout FY23. So we had a lot going on. Some of our major accomplishments, we tend to focus a lot on senior nutrition. These are folks who are living on a fixed income. Meals on Wheels is typically either free or voluntary donation of $2. Concrete Meal is the same, voluntary donation of $2. We like to provide additional options for people to gather and congregate together. So last year we added an additional 140 opportunities for residents to come in and share a meal, get a full balanced either breakfast, lunch, or dinner, So we were really proud of that, adding that to our list of things to do. We did an overhaul on the senior tax work-off program, and we increased the abatement up to $1,500 in conjunction with the assessor's office and the finance office, and lots of help on this major project. But that was, last year was the first year that we fully got it implemented. Really proud of that program. We're one of the largest in the state currently, and we have 103 active workers at the moment. And our best accomplishment, the center on Shattuck Street, the senior center secured its construction manager, Commodore Builders, last fall, and our guaranteed maximum price in the fall of 2023, which is really exciting for us, and really looking forward to putting a shovel in the ground next month. Some of the goals coming up for fiscal year 2025, we've been working on achieving our dementia-friendly accreditation from Dementia Friendly Massachusetts. This has been a long time in the works. We are nearly there, so that is one goal that I'm positive we will achieve. And then the next goal, open the new building to the public in the spring or summer of 2025. I don't want to jinx it, but that is the goal. That is the goal. I do want to say that it's going to be very difficult to predict what opening a new center will mean for our budget, what the impact will be. I was speaking with another local senior center director who opened their new building, and they saw a 40% increase in participation, 28% increase in their social service needs, and a 30% increase in their transportation needs. So we know it's going to increase. If you build it, they will come, but we don't know exactly what the effect on the budget will be.
I think, do you have anything here on personnel requests and future personnel requests? Is that, okay.
Yeah,
good.
yes, it is. Okay, so.
Pam for that question.
Well,
Lining it
speak
up.
to this, you know, it equates to people. So.
Yes, that's a majority of our budget is people power. You can see that very tiny blue pie slice in the green pie. That is the EHS budget and the overall town budget. So I like to always say that we are a teeny tiny slice, but we have a pretty big impact for what we actually are. Majority of our expenses are actually salaries, and the $45,000-ish is our operating budget. We operate very leanly. What is not factored into our pie slice or into the budget report is that MART, Montechusett Regional Transport Authority, funds our van driver salaries 100%. So I put the additional circle up there of the $40,000 for our van drivers. We submit invoices every month, and they pay in full for our van drivers. Okay, so drilling down into our expenses, the $45,594. Outside of the salaries, our biggest expenses are our professional services and our Crosstown Connect fees. The very biggest expense we have is the William James Interface Program, which is a mental health referral service program. So through William James College, they have a program for municipalities that if you live in town or you work for this town and you're looking for a mental health counselor, I don't know if any of you have tried to do that recently, but it takes a very, very long time. Trying to find someone who meets your specific needs, meets your insurance requirements, it is very, very difficult and time consuming. I think it takes on average 11 phone calls to get connected to a counselor. So this William James program provides you somebody who does all that legwork and finds you a counselor. That is our largest expense. In 2021, this moved over from, or FY21, this moved over from the Board of Health budget to the EHS budget. Second, I have more on the William James Interface Program a little bit further ahead, but the second biggest expense is our Crosstown Connect program, which is our dispatch service for our vans. $11,500, but for that cost, we receive 2 full-time dispatchers Monday through Friday. And there is absolutely no way we'd be able to afford that if it wasn't this regional program, Crosstown Connect. So very, very thankful to have that partnership with Crosstown. I'll go back to William James now. So back in fiscal year 21, when this moved over into the EHS budget, the MOUs for the agreement with William James was a 2-year agreement, and so the cost appeared to be $32,000. So every year following, I put it over into $32,000. It is not $32,000. It's actually $16,000 per year. So the budget was artificially inflated. It's corrected. The EHS budget came down. So that is why you'll see negative $10,000 on my budget. EHS didn't actually get their budget cut. There was just an artificially inflated cost in there.
Thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah.
That we never would have found.
No, I did. No, morally, I could not just leave it. We are looking into actually other options for mental health referral services as we move further and further away from the absolute chaos that was COVID in like the darkest days. Mental health services are being stretched to their capacity, but new things are coming out, new programs and new referral services. So with the William James Interface Program, we did not do a 2-year MOU this year, just 1, because I do feel like there is something less costly that we can look into. So that might not be here next year as one of our largest expenses.
So just before you move on from the professional services,
yes,
in the narrative you said you were also picking up a software license.
Yep, that's on the next slide.
So that's in your professional services budget already? Because it's not separate, so I was just
No,
curious.
it's in professional services.
Okay, thank you.
So if you can go to the next slide, I'll explain.
So I had a question about interface.
Sure.
And you might have to get back to me on this, but I was curious if you've seen what the trends are in terms of usage.
Yeah.
Just because I know LPS introduced a very similar program.
Care Solace.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if that had any impact on how much folks in Littleton are using interface.
You know, it has had some effect.
Mm-hmm.
We dropped down in our referral numbers to that program, I think we went from about 27 referrals to 23 referrals, and then we bounced back up to 34 referrals in that quarter, the most recent quarter. We're seeing less referrals for children. I think we had 8 in our last quarter and 26 adults. Now, out of those 26 adults, only 1 specifically said that they heard about this service from someone at the senior center. It's interesting. I think a lot of providers know about this service and refer people to it. It's also on our website. It's in our newsletter. So the Care Solace program is fantastic. It's far more clinical than what we currently have. Okay, so budget requests. Very slight increases for the EHS budget. I did a 7% increase in the FY25 food costs based on the USDA inflation index because we do provide a lot of meals out of our senior diner. We also moved our software system, it's called My Senior Center, over from the IT department budget to the EHS budget, so overall cost neutral, but that $1,300 annually is now in our professional services line, along with our print shop costs and our kitchen maintenance costs. An additional $700 for staff longevity pay. We have 2 staff now who have achieved longevity pay. And then, as I mentioned, the $16,000 duplicated expense is now removed.
So just one quick question on wages. You had mentioned the MART, kind of offset for the van drivers, but in And I think you said that was 40,000, right? But in our budget book, it has, what, 100,000 in salary for van drivers?
We have 6 van driver positions. We currently have 3 van drivers, based on the current need. Van drivers do not come out of our budget. Do not come out of the town budget.
So if the costs go up, Mart would sub?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Mart leases us 1 vehicle and fully reimburses us for the driver costs.
Okay, so if they're all filling all their shifts and you fill all 5 or 6, then Mart would still pay for
They
the whole
still
town.
reimburse,
Okay.
yep.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on. So other ways that we fund our mission, and I say mission, not just our operations. We're not really a department who brings in revenue to the town, but we have gifts and donations and grants that directly support residents. In 2023, our donations totaled $56,000, and a majority of that went to TRED. 26,000 went to our TRED program, which goes directly to seniors who need tax relief, and 25,000 went to our fuel assistance emergency program for residents who need assistance with fuel. We have some other smaller grants that fund smaller programs, and then the FY24 formula grant is from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. That is an annual grant from EOEA. It's interesting because this is the first year that they have given us 50% of the actual grant. When the 9C cuts were announced, we kind of went, oh, that's why we only got 50% of our formula grant. The formula grant funds all of our program instructors. So all of our classes, fitness classes, the formula grant pays for that. EOEA has promised that we will receive the other 50% of our formula grant, but we shall see. I don't know, but I'm hopeful. Otherwise, we still have money left over from the formula grant during COVID that was able to be rolled forward. So we are not, I am not concerned about the formula grant funding at the moment.
So either way, you're okay for this fiscal year, but any signals about next fiscal year, FY25?
No signals yet.
And is that donation, that's a huge donation number. Is that that's from residents?
Residents, businesses.
Foundations, trusts.
Again, that's...
I know you're in front of us a lot this year.
Yeah. This
It's-
picture is the Rotary Club with a $10,000 check to...
It's not
TRED.
uncommon for us to see a $2,500 or $5,000 donation to the TRED fund at a select board meeting. It happens frequently.
Right, I think it just speaks very well to the town.
Agreed.
And to y'all.
Okay, moving on to our 5-year capital plan. A new van. This has been on our capital plan for a while, and I keep kicking it down the road a little bit further. During COVID, we weren't using our vans. The lifespan of the last van we received through a MassDOT grant is still about 68,000 miles on it. It's in very good condition. There is a current MassDOT grant that I applied for in the this past winter that would fund 80% of this fancy electric vehicle here with wheelchair accessible lift. I will find out if we receive it in the spring. If not, I can reapply in the fall. That is one of my goals, to receive this grant. Otherwise, we have $33,842 in a new van gift fund, and the Friends of Littleton Council on Aging have pledged $21,000 towards the cost of a new van. So that's FY26.
If you receive the grant, $80,000, is there a sunset on it? And how quickly do you have to spend it? I mean, is it within a fiscal year it has to be spent, or is it just they give it to you and maybe you spend it sometime, or?
I think there's some flexibility with that, Fred, because sometimes with these vehicles, what we're seeing is just a lead time to be able to put the order in. So I think that the state homes would have to be able to provide more lead time, just with, again, with these
You know, it's just, you know, if it has a short sunset, then,
Yeah, I don't
Yes.
think
you
that's...
know, use it or lose it.
Are you applying now because of that lead time to get the van?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so they've actually stated that these vans will not be available until late 2025. We have to provide 20%. The Friends Pledge would cover that, and they would fund the rest.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, future operating needs. Like I said earlier, in terms of operating needs, it's challenging to predict what a new center will mean for us. I said this last year, but I know for FY26, this will be on my budget for a budget request, is increasing our administrative staff from part-time to full-time. That'll be about a $32,000 variance or increase in our budget. Definitely with the new building, new influx of people coming in, there's only so far I can stretch senior tax workers and how much we can utilize them to fill in the gaps like we currently do. So definitely need a full-time administrative staff to help keep up with the flow of people. The second thing that I do want to put on the radar is new building utilities. Utilities don't come out of the EHS budget, but I did talk in depth with Sam Alvarez about the library's utilities, went through the bills in the very early days before things really got dialed in, and also looked at some other senior center buildings that have a similar square footage to see approximately what their utility budgets are. So it's looking like it would be about $36,000 annually. That's an estimate of what utilities might be for a building of our size. That being said, it is an all-electric building, so I'm not sure. That is a prediction on my part. Okay, and just to summarize, we have a very lean budget, very slight increases. Everything is offset by that $16,000 decrease. Staff costs, COLA, steps, just the basics. Our operating budget supplemented by grants. The formula grant supplements all of our programs. I like to reiterate that our senior tax work-off program gives back to the town, adds value to our department as well. We have 103 workers who in November provided 4,200 hours of service to the town. So you spend money on our department, we're giving back to you in other ways. And then we use gifts and donations to support our budget. A lot of those gifts and donations go directly to residents. They don't support our operations very much at all. And then in closing, our future operating budget with the new building will increase operation costs. It's kind of an unknown at this point, but we're making predictions and estimating best we can. Any questions?
I think you're doing amazing work on a shoestring, so thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question. In the budget book, the wages for the assistant director went down?
Yes.
Okay.
That's an hourly change.
Okay, so it's just fewer hours?
Fewer hours, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, which will eventually increase again.
Okay.
Great presentation, thank you.
Thank you.
Very thorough, thanks. If everybody comes out with a negative.
Next up is Martin Toohill, presenting the planning budget. This is on page 100 of your budget.
Hi, good evening. Maureen Toohill, Town Planner. Nice to be here again. Have the opportunity to speak with you. I'll keep it real short. Just highlighted a few major accomplishments from this past calendar year. Planning Department was able to obtain MEMA funding to help us update the hazard mitigation plan. We're currently doing that process. MAPC is our consultant on that. We were awarded a $50,000 EEA Planning Assistance Grant to work through the MBTA communities requirements. That grant has been fully expended, and then just recently we did receive the reserve fund transfer from the Finance Committee to move that work forward. Another accomplishment was a $4,000 Mass Works grant for town sewer, and $4 million Mass Works infrastructure grant for town sewer. On the heels of the $9.5 million Mass Works grant and legislative earmarks from prior years. So to me, that highlights that the significant amount of planning work that the town has been doing over the past 8 to 10 years is really coming to fruition. Between going through the master plan processes and the area plans, that's really set the town up well when going through that and having the various departments working together. So in the planning staff supports the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, and the Affordable Housing Trust on a daily basis. Let's see, so budget requests or department goals, just maintain the professional level of planning services for the town. Recently hired assistant town planner. Cooper's fresh out of school and learning a lot about what planning in Massachusetts is all about. And the department hopes to support the development and redevelopment that meets the town goals that are outlined in the various planning reports. One planning capital budget request for this next fiscal year would be $30,000 to do part 2 of the zoning diagnostic and recodification. Last year, if I recall, it was $32,000 that was funded to start that process. I'm planning on starting that as soon as we're clear of the MBTA communities work. So the first part is
So not for a couple of years, anyway.
Oh, Jiminy, don't say that.
I'm sorry.
But the first step is the zoning diagnostic, where you get a consultant to help you go through our zoning bylaws and identify those obsolete, outdated, and illegal portions of the bylaw, and then we would go through and recodify that. So it's a great for zoning nerds process to go through, but also very helpful for the town. Let's see, and then future capital plans, just the current $30,000 request. And then looking ahead, by the time we hit 28, 29, and 30, we have to start thinking about funding an update to the 2017 master plan. Although it seems like we just finished it, it'll be time to start looking at that process again. Start the conversation about what the town wants to do with that. Department operating budget requests, fund town planner, assistant town planner, and a department assistant. Expenses are level funded, so the total just $216,000. And I think that's the same number that we were working with from the assistant town administrator.
I think
we
may need to get that tally on. I think it's off by a little bit, but it's $205,000 in the book. So
okay, well I think we we corrected a staffing switch that.
Okay. All right. We'll make a note to get back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just thanks. We can double check.
Okay.
Make sure I'm understanding the process as well.
Okay.
And then projected 5-year needs for operating run needs, just to maintain staffing levels to make sure that we can get all the work accomplished. I'm finding that with town planner, assistant town planner, and access to department assistant, then we are able to keep a lot of things moving forward. We'll be able to move forward with the rezoning requests, MBTA communities now, recodification next. The planning board often gets additional requests for looking at zoning for various parcels or areas of town, or one of the more recent requests was look at the adult use marijuana zoning bylaw and see if there's a need to update that based on Cannabis Control Commission regulations and based on the number of complaints for odor for the grow facilities. Is it worth the town looking at reducing the number of grow facilities that could be allowed? So I think we're going to be moving in. I think the planning board's going to be moving into that discussion this spring. So we're in the process of using more electronic filing, hopefully moving away from always needing paper for everything, and preparing the town to update the 2017 master plan that I just covered. And I would like to highlight the importance of training and professional development opportunities for all of the planning staff.
I was actually surprised not to see some requests for funding on the training and professional development with just how rapidly things are changing in the state right now.
It's in the HR budget, is that why?
Well, yeah, and that's thank you for bringing that up, because it's not clear to me exactly how we're going to address that for this upcoming year, whether it needs to be in the department budgets or if it will be in the HR budget or if it's in the town administrator budget. Over the last several years, it's been a combination of those.
So in the planning budget, there's $860 for educational and professional development,
which doesn't
seems
mean
woefully
one
inadequate.
conference.
That's a credit hour. I think we've basically covered it through the portions of the HR. So, but there may be something we look at in terms of what you would need in the future.
A lot of what going on around the planning board.
Yeah. So, and then when planning and zoning board members do go to trainings offered, then the town does get a discount on the insurance rates from MIAA. So that's the same as some
investment.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I will slide over forward.
Mike.
The other half.
All right. This is Michael Kenny coming up, our billing inspector. His budget is on page 124.
And I have to say that I've really appreciated working with Mike. His practical approach to everything is very good to see. Sorry.
Mike Kenny's building inspector. This is my first time doing this, so forgive me if it's all screwed up.
It's all good.
It's a distinct possibility it is.
We'll blame Mullen.
We can, because he's there. He's here as backup.
Want to take the bullets.
Yeah, right. All right, so I was told to just read slides, so that's what I'll do. Major accomplishments this past year, completed the implementation of the Land Use and Buildings Department, the relocation of office to lower level, town hall, maintained land use services while being short-staffed, completed and implemented the online annual inspections, application process, payments, and inspection scheduling for the building inspector and fire prevention officer, designed the annual inspection certificate for establishments. Thanks to my admin, she did a great job on that. With help from IT, created a renewal process to alert establishments of renewal due date 3 days prior to due date. She also did that also. So goals coming up. Continue software implementation to allow more efficient workflow of the building department and permit process. Offer more fluid report generation and technical data to other departments. Offer public online application and payment. Continue to develop customized forms for tracking ongoing projects in the annual renew campaign. Coordinate annual inspections with the fire department. Track complaints. Track complaint building and zoning violations. And there's no change in that.
Yeah, no capital budget request for next year.
Right.
But-
Yep, I went the wrong one. Right, no capital request next year. Following year we do. However, the following year.
I was just about to ask, how long is that vehicle going to last?
That's a good question. That's, I'm hoping I can replace that in 2026.
So I thought when we bought the Lightning last year, it was supposed to be used by the building department during the mornings and the park and rec during the afternoons. Did that fall apart?
It fell apart, yes.
Does the vehicle you're currently driving, that's a reuse of the police vehicle? correct?
It's one of the interceptors.
Yeah. I mean, how's that work?
It's doing all right.
I mean, we go through police cars every 3 years, so I just didn't know if that was...
Yeah, I've had to do it we've
Well,
had
every
to-
year, yeah.
Had to have some stuff done to it to get, to make it past inspection. But that's
yeah.
normal, tires and ball joints,
Yeah.
that's normal stuff. So, and the other, we
So I
have,
just say for the vehicles, I don't know if I'd necessarily it's falling apart. We've got to be using them as fleet vehicles, so the Lightning is being used on a regular basis, primarily by Parks and Rec, though. And so but, you know, it is being utilized.
yeah, it's not by me, but that's okay. What I have works fine. Operating budget highlights, support inspection staff, vehicle maintenance, and continuing education for myself and the other inspectors. Ranges 266,531, expenses 6,950, totals 27,394. Said that wrong, didn't I? Sorry, I screwed up.
And I think, and that might, again, we probably need to touch base on that one, because I think that we slightly adjusted that too, because the way that the department was budgeting for any of the other building inspectors, the alternates, so it was a little different, so we were able to find some changes there, we still are, so it's basically a little bit of an over budget on that side, so the money's still there, but we did tweak that around a little bit, so that final number, at least it's here, Mike, it's going to be tweaked down just a little bit. I think we're actually at about total $255,855 for the total budget.
Yeah, we did lose our alternate electrical inspector this year, he passed away.
Yeah, so we're in hiring.
Yeah, we gotta get that posted out.
Yeah. Ryan, I think, so the wages number there is coming just from the alternate staffing, it's not the actual wage number from buildings, I think it's just the one number that's up there.
Yeah, that's so, we'll clarify that. Okay.
So in the staffing, it has a new stipend for the wire inspector. Can you just describe what?
Did I miss it? Say it again, please.
In the budget book, there's $7,500 stipend for a wire inspector.
Right, the current stipend is just under $4,000. That's for mileage for use of his personal vehicle.
Yes.
He's finding that's not covering the mileage, so
Okay.
the request is for.
And that was something we had talked about, it was a correction to.
Okay, it just says new stipend and it doesn't have something to compare it to.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you.
Projected FY 25 year operating needs. Augment staffing levels to meet federal workload. Maintain scanning and uploaded paper. All our paper files are getting all uploaded into the software program that we have. Maintain and improve online capability for public to submit applications and payments, which is an ongoing thing. There's still people coming in and have to help quite a bit, but.
I just had a question. There's a lot of there in automation. So currently you can pay online.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's just the system we have, is the one that you're going to continue to use, it's just trying to continue to help you.
Yeah, it takes credit card and e-checks online. And then when they come in to write a check, we just process it.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
And I know that the building department's been considering, what the staffing needs are going to be when building permits take up again, and the building becomes a little busy.
How are permits holding? Last year says you did about 1,400. Is it about the same? That's, my question.
Yep. Yeah, last year there was 1,392 issued. That was fiscal '23.
So this year,
so far,
it's softening, right?
A little bit, but so far I've issued, the department has issued 826 so far, fiscal '24, which isn't all that bad. I was expecting to be lower than that, and it wasn't, so.
And how many of the, you did like 500 and something building permits? That's the real driver. But how many building permits this year?
It's just building itself?
Yeah, building permits.
Not including, not electrical, not plumbing.
Right.
I don't have that in front of me.
I'm just curious.
I'd have to get that.
That's the driver, right?
Yeah. I'd have to get that for you.
Okay.
This is just the overall numbers.
But it's not soaring at best. It's level to down a little bit.
Yeah, it feels like it's the same as last year, but a little less.
Okay.
It's not falling off as bad as some people have predicted it was going to.
And Brenda's salary is up against your budget and Board of Health's budget?
Well,
It doesn't show up in Mike's budget.
it shows, it should, I think it should show.
Yeah, it shows in a few places. We kind of have it spread out among a few of the budgets. So we basically have it spread out in land use. We have two full-time FTEs that we're funding for support services. So it's under health. I think we have some
Planning. It's under your budget, right?
planning.
33.
Yeah, my blue tabs are here for.
Right.
Yeah.
Brenda's split between land use and planning. No, land use and planning.
It would make more sense to have Lucia at planning because she does zoning board of appeals and affordable housing trust.
So which we talked about, and we will change for the final as to where it falls under, but it won't increase the budget. We'll just be putting it under more appropriate places. It's a conversation.
It shows up in here under planning.
For Brenda, it's under land use and planning. For Lucia, it's all under land use.
We're
Figuring that dance out.
thinking about switching that because of what the staff actually works on. But whether it's under land use or planning, we all work together on the same issues.
And if a result of all the dancing and shuffling, if that requires some sort of a adjustment to job descriptions, that kind of thing, we'll just follow that process and make sure everybody's whole.
Right, as we get the position, facilities manager, that's going to play into this as well, with an assistant.
Right, so that, a very good point. That does leave the question of how to provide support for the facilities director and health director. So,
Right, and that's what the proposal would be, that the other full-time person we would hire would be supporting both the health director and the facilities director, but also providing backup for Brenda as well, and vice versa.
Yep.
So continuity in the department.
Cross-training.
Right. Okay. Anything else?
That was not painful.
Nailed it, Mike.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Every once in a while, I'll take that lightning for a spin just so we feel a little bit better about it, because that's how it was sold to us.
No, because it'll go dead when I have it. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
So next up is information technology. This is on page 84. So I'm going to fill in for Nancy on this one. So information technology, major accomplishments in 2023. Nancy and Tom were able to complete all their migration to cloud environment, and they did that through funds that they were awarded through the Community Compact Grant, so we were able to do that at a lower cost. We were able, through a lot of support, through all of the town, as well as Steve, his design. I found out that Steve this is the second time through on the website change, so that's something I didn't know about Steve before, so I do now. We also are using more and trying to put more documents under our document management system. And that right now we're working hard on trying to get a lot of the HR historical payroll records into electronic format through the Laserfish digital format, which you have access to online.
That meets the same requirement for storing HR data for.
Right. We know whatever the documents are, yeah. So we're really trying to use the system and the software we have with that. So we've also been implementing additional security hardware software on end user accounts. One of the things we're doing is the separate authentication pieces, and everyone needs kind of different pieces. Some people are using their cell phones, other people are using their computers, depending on what their needs are. And we're also creating additional online permits for departments. A lot of this work was done, some more work over the summer for Board of Health and developing more permits, and IT was helpful to them along those lines as we try to put more and more, take away the paper and put more work online. So in terms of their goals for the upcoming fiscal year, kind of hearing these same themes about technology preparation for Indian Hill, technology preparation for the center and Shattuck Street, so as we work toward the build out of that. For police and fire, we've got some new initiative. We've got body cameras that are going to be implemented in the police department, as well as a new security /camera system that was funded through capital article, and getting all that up and working, and having it be something that is being regularly used by police staff and dispatch primarily. We're also doing end-user Office 365 training for staff as we continue to finalize our and segue off of our server-based Word and go 365 and go fully cloud-based. Things are a little different in terms of the look and feel of Office 365, so it's been training associated with that, and that's been another focus for IT.
Just on that training, is that, again, like another one coming out of the HR budget?
A lot of this training, Tyler, it's just Nancy and Tom kind of just providing that. Okay, you're moving on to 365. Here's what you have to almost sort of that one-on-one hand hold.
So more of a time impact on their schedule.
Right, exactly. Sometimes it's just a different, it's the same. It's a lot of the same programs, but it's a different look, a different feel for it. So in terms of capital budget requests, IT isn't making any requests in FY25, but again, clearly with our changes to more cloud-based solutions, our on-premise equipment is greatly reduced. Also, in terms of our regular PC replacements and schedule, it's already factored into the operating budget. So it's more of, a PC is more of a consumable really for how we look at it. Whereas in prior years you may be spending money on a capital budget for this, but this is baked into our operational budget for regular PC upgrades. So,
a question, just as we move into the body camera era, which I think is a wonderful thing, does IT or police or select board need to come up with a set of policies for, what the rules are for accessing, those camera feeds?
Working on that, Brian.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so absolutely, you can't do something like that without having the kind of policies behind it. So absolutely.
Okay, excellent.
In terms of the wages, IT manager is has basically reached max, so the salaries there are fairly level, as well as the expenses are level funded at $500,000. So total of $697,751. In terms of operating needs moving forward, the main points Nancy wanted to get across was that additional staff will increase our software and security licenses. Additional buildings will increase our licenses and maintenance support, as well as costs associated with support contracts. It's kind of an ongoing theme with new facilities. We talked about that earlier, and IT is no exception. And then, of course, annual increases in maintenance, support, and licenses. So, licenses, the new model is, instead of you buying the software, you're going to be getting a license every year, and that's, but every year those expenses do change. We're not proposing any changes in the expense budget this year. We think we can live within it, but maybe something that we're going to be seeing tweaking in the next few years, especially as we open new facilities as well. And that's it for IT.
So I just have one question on the IT expenses for the software. We know that we're transferring these out to individual departments.
Right.
There was a small one for the Council on Aging, 1,300.
Right.
So this isn't really necessarily level funded. It's actually going up because other things are moving out. Mm-hmm. Do we know what else is moved out and where we're keeping this budget the same?
So I think a lot of that happened in the FY23 budget. So in terms of what, I'd have to get back to you in terms of the specifics.
It would just be good to know as we shift things around how they're shifting.
Yeah, because I think last year, we moved out a ton of stuff last year from fiscal 24, but we had a big jump in budget, right? So even with that, there are costs, right?
I'm not disagreeing with any of that. It would just be good
to see the difference. What's the growth in contract? Yeah, right. Contract costs or other new ads and that too. Yeah.
This reminded me of, this probably isn't the forum for it, but maybe an update on an intrusion update, perhaps on the cyber side, just a little bit more of how we're combating it. What is it increase, just to get an idea of what we're up against. That's going to drive some of the budgeting as well, but we don't specifically see here, right?
Yeah, and to IT's credit, they do a really good job of trying to educate staff about the risks.
Oh yeah, I get it.
For any of you who have a town account, will get that information. So, but a lot of times these systems are only as strong as the people who are
end user.
The end users, really. So much of it is trying to educate them and for people to be consciously skeptical about what they're seeing and what they're clicking on, because that's where a lot of the risks do come.
Do you know if the plan is to make multi-factor authentication mandatory eventually?
It is. That is absolutely, that's where we're on now, right? And some people push back, understandably, that it's a little bit more of a hassle, but that is absolutely the goal to again help ensure that our system is really.
Drop of blood will activate the system.
Yeah. DNA checking. It's a gap.
Okay. All right. So moving along, we're going to move on to the town administrator and town council budgets. So major accomplishments in 2023, we've hired a town administrator. Congratulations, Jim. We are breaking ground on the senior center, hopefully in March. That's
page 69.
It says pages 69 and 108. Thank you. We also oversaw 2 special town meetings and 1 annual town meeting as well. So a busy year for us. We also executed the purchase of the Indian Hill property at the February 15th special town meeting. And just this past Friday, we received the first place in category 3, which is communities between 5,000 and 12,499 in population for the MMA annual report contest, which we're very proud of. And I thank Lisa and Diane in our office for all their hard work and coordinating that project. So and Gary gracefully brought the award back from Boston. So thank you for that, Gary. So in terms of goals for the upcoming fiscal year, we are looking to get bids in hand for the renovation of the Indian Hill Music School. We now have an OPM on board and a designer services firm that we have contracts with to help execute that. We're actually going to be doing, I think on Thursday, is the design firm that wants to get into Indian Hill, so we'll be getting them access to that, and this will all be kicking into gear. So the idea, again, is to be able to go out, have a bid in hand to renovate the building, working with PMBC to clarify the scope, as well as working with the school administration and Parks and Rec to make sure that their interests and needs are also met in that process as we finalize the design. Facilitate and monitor the construction of the senior center. We've basically started starting on weekly meetings on that as we gear up to start breaking ground. More to come on that, but you know, as Liz has pointed out, we now have the OPM and construction manager at risk, so we're working away at that, and it's coming along. Supporting the MSBA Shaker Lane Elementary School project, so Steve Benuti and Chuck are working with me and the schools. It's a very active thing right now. We're in the process of putting out a request for proposals for designer services to take a look at what our options, so to bring someone aboard and help working with the OPM to determine the future. We're looking at replacement or rehabilitation of Shaker Lane Elementary School, so it's going to be a lot of work in supporting that project. And of course, be supporting the ongoing construction of the town center sewer project. A little bit of a lull here in the winter in terms of activity, but once the spring kicks in, we're going to be seeing some more work on that. And then, of course, also coordinating the municipal related needs associated with the development of 550 King and 410 Great Road. We have no capital requests that we're putting in here. Our office budget is essentially 3.5 FTEs, so town administrator, assistant town administrator, our full-time office assistant, and we also have a part-time 0.5 FTE assistant as well, and Diane Dickerson. So basic expenses are for basic office activities and $5,000 for matching grant funds. There's occasionally times that we go out for a grant and we have to put up a little seed money, and so we have a line item there in the town administrator's budget to pull from as necessary. So
I'm getting texts that your mic keeps going in and out. I can't hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's all right. My one fan watching from home. So I may be doing
my wife critiquing me.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So total budget is $457,807. In terms of changes that we've made, we made a slight tweak to the other wages. That was a reduction of $2,800. We are also made a few other tweaks, about $7,300 for an anticipated reclassification of the ATA position to be an ATA/finance director, and about $15,000 added to reflect what the TA salary will be in FY25. So that actually increased the budget from where we were before to the tune of about $19,459. Okay.
Excuse me, Ryan. The one thing I didn't see there is anything on the orchard. I mean, that thing's been walling forever, and I know there's another group that's involved, but is it coming to a head?
We're going to meet next week and come up with define a budget or an expected request that we might need as a line item.
So right now, what we're working on is prioritizing some of the repairs and rehabilitations that we think are needed, and basically with a gross estimate of what we think that will cost. And then we would need to add in professional services as well for the attorneys, potentially for some facilitation to get that RFP out.
And I think it's complicated by the fact that some of the items which the town might take care of would be better left undone depending on the disposition of the person who acquires it.
Right.
We don't want to rehab the house if someone wants to do it not at prevailing wage if they, if we decide to sell that, for example. So we're doing our best to come up with a good guess at what we might need in the next fiscal year.
Okay, so in the next couple of months, something will...
I think hopefully next week, we'll have a number.
Okay. Great, that's just, thank you.
Okay. In terms of future operating needs, I put a TBD. Jim's been with us, less than 2 months now? So, I think as we... Yeah, so, okay, there you go. So, in terms of where we're going, I think it's just kind of getting, understanding, let Jim start saying things and where we're going to go from that. So,
Corporate jet.
Moving on to town council, we are proposing, basically we use two services. We use Harrington Heath, which is our primary counsel, and then for personnel and labor matters, we use KP Law. So we're proposing to increase that by $20,000. Two things, both the hourly rates for both firms are going up, and we're also reflecting what our spending trends have been with the firms. So we're just trying to stay up ahead of that. So we're thinking that this increase will address that.
Do we see an increase every 3 years with the contracts?
Well, actually more annually, typically, is what you see for the hourly rates, and that translates.
So it doesn't really...
No, I think you're asking,
The
or we're using more
negotiation
hours.
years of all the contracts we do. Does we see a spike?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on the need. We've tried. Our current. We currently have contracts that are up, and our hope is to go back to town council sparingly. We don't necessarily have them as active participants at the table right now. We're hoping we don't need to do that, but so we're hoping again keep that cost down and come back with a good contract.
But in fairness to my ours, Harrington, which is now Harrington Heap, they hadn't gone up for several years.
We signed an increase last year.
We did last year,
Yeah.
but that was the first time in, I think, 5 years that they had imposed an increase on us.
Right, and I think that's part of what this reflects.
Yeah, it's been pretty stable. I remember 15 years ago, it was, 100, 150, so this is not bad.
Okay, wanted to move on to buildings and fuel. So I want to talk a little bit about the facilities manager. So November 22, special town meeting approved funding for the facilities manager. We advertised the position, and then we conducted interviews at the time and made a decision at that point that the type of candidates that we were getting back really didn't meet what we had hoped for the position and what we wanted out of it. We then subsequently reclassified the position and were able to advertise it at a higher rate. We conducted interviews with 3 candidates in December. We made offers to 2 individuals, and unfortunately, both offers were unsuccessful. So I don't think this is an issue of what we're advertising it for. When we first went out at the lower level, the type of candidates we got were good, but not really exactly what I think we were hoping for in terms of skill sets. And then when we went out again, just this past November, December, we really did get a good group. Unfortunately, we just weren't able to make a connection in the end. I don't think it was a matter of, again, the salary level. I think it's where it needs to be. And we're in the process of going back out again, and hopefully this time making a good hire for us. So cautiously optimistic about that, but it does take work. Our hope is that once we do make that hire, we're going to be working with a new employee to develop our goals and objectives for that individual, and as they basically establish a new department. So capital requests, we don't have any capital requests, but the facilities director is going to be very responsible for overseeing the new senior center once completed, and I don't have this here, but obviously 36 King Street as well. So we're adding more assets, and such that the demand and the need to have someone who's looking after those facilities is even more important. And then, of course, the facilities director will hopefully, and we anticipate, is going to be developing and overseeing our capital planning. So I think there are probably other needs out there that we're not fully paying attention to, and having someone here to help facilitate that for us is going to be a great aid to us to help focus our efforts in that end. So right now, this is 2.5 FTEs. The half FTE is part of that new administrative support position. So we've got under that townwide utilities, maintenance services, and supplies. So we're just with the salaries and the expenses, we're just south of $1 million. And with that, the townwide utilities is something that we're continually looking at in terms of electricity, water, things of that nature. So that's where falls in under that one budget, and most of those bills go through our office and town administrator's office. In terms of changes that we made, I talked a little bit earlier about the wells. So we reduced the town common water bill by $20,000. Steve Yonley informs me that he's hoping that he'll be able to get a contract out and be able to install wells for both Common and Kerber, hopefully this spring, such that in FY '25 we won't have any expenses associated with with watering. So that, or the purchase of water, which is great. He did say, we hope we find water, so I'm not that's always important. So he didn't make any promise on that end.
You can't find water this year, something's wrong.
Right. And we also tweaked the facility repair. The thinking here is that the hope is that 36 King Street will be, well into the rehabilitation side phase at that point, for probably most of FY '25. Thus, anything that we're going to be doing in terms of repairs and such really is something we can take a temporary cut on. But then looking at what we're going to have in FY '26, both with the new senior center and 36 King Street, that just be forewarned, that will will go up. We'll be going up for that period. So.
I think we should assume that if we get a facility director, the first thing they're going to do is tell us that we're woefully underspending on maintenance. and eventually it will be to our benefit because things will last longer. But I think we have to assume that once that person's brought on board, they're going to be asking for appropriately
serious money.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. So again, operating, looking forward and over the next 5 years, operating expenses at 36 King Street, and of course, again, just to beat the proverbial dead horse, the senior center expenses as well. So, in terms of fuel, we're proposing to increase the budget by 10%. The fuel is fairly unpredictable. It's been stable recently, but I think based upon our trends and where we're at, I think we wanted to just put a little bit more of a hedge here for fuel. So didn't make any changes to that. Just going up by 10% or $17,000 for next year. Moving on, select board. I think we wanted to just remind the board we're going to be having another session to a retreat on this upcoming Friday on the 26th. At our last meeting in the summer, boards came up with 5 goals. First is to review our local government structure to determine whether or not we're going to be pursuing a town charter. Just to let everybody know, DOR is basically offering the town a free service to come in and review our management structure. We're going to be talking a little bit about where we're at now, and I know there'll be some engagement probably with the Finance Committee, probably with the Select Board, I know with the Select Board, to talk about our needs structurally and This is a no-cost service that the DOR provides to us, and we're looking forward to bringing them in and seeing what they, what their thoughts are in terms of what we can do and maybe do things differently and more efficiently in here in town. Next piece is to evaluate our current communication resources and talk about prospective changes to that. There's been a lot of discussion about maybe having do newsletters, things of that nature, and of course, what more can we be doing in terms of outreach via social media to communicate and connect with people, which is critical, and I think it's something we're always looking to improve upon. So that's another goal. We just talked about developing a plan for utilization of the Nagog Hill Orchard. There's currently a request for information that's out, so seems like there's a lot of interest in that, so which is great. So hopefully we'll come out of that and move on from there. This is something that Mark's working on, which is to review and revise the format and substance of the Select Board's regulations and policies, which I think by my last count, Mark, 280 pages or so. Yeah. So it's pretty substantive, and we're looking to find ways to streamline that. Just at our meeting last night, actually, we just changed one of the alcohol policies, so basically making it consistent with state law, which is a better way to do it. And finally, partnering with the Economic Development Committee to support the sewer project and identify options in subsequent phases for the sewer project, which align with our desire for responsible growth in town. So I think things are really going to change once the sewer is in, and some of the downtown businesses will have more options available to them. So we're in the precipice of a lot of change in town, and this is all part of that. And again, we're going to be talking some more about all of these things, presumably from 2 to 5 at the fire station on Friday. So in terms of the budget, per the May 1 ATM vote, Select Board stipends have been eliminated, so this budget reflects that.
Thank you for your service.
I keep a little green book of all the hours.
Expenses include conferences, our Magic and MAPC memberships, travel and dues and subscriptions. So when we looked at this, we thought, based upon what some of our expenses are, a lot of it with the MMA conferences, and it's great. A lot of the board members, I give the board members a lot of credit to. They're going to a lot of trainings and getting up to speed. So we wanted to add a little bit more for some of our travel, dues and subscriptions, things like that we're seeing higher run rates on based upon actual costs. So in this case, we actually added we added about $5,000 to the budget. So our expenses here for the Select Board is increasing to $17,800. So that's that Select Board. So
Could I ask? That last number, the 5,000, is that, does that take into account MMA's change on training, the online training now coming with a fee? Would that come out of that number?
Yeah, it would come, right, so the 5,000 is in addition to what we had before, thinking of those kinds of things, right, and taking advantage of those kinds of programs, right, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we're, if it's okay, we'll move on. The Finance Committee and Reserve Fund, it's pages 107 and 108. So for the Finance Committee, we're not proposing any changes on that. Clerical wages of $800 staying the same, and dues and subscriptions, which is primarily for the Finance Committee's membership in the Association of Town Finance Committees, who does great work, I will say, having some of their meetings. So it's level funded at $1,300, and the reserve fund, we are proposing to reduce that number by $50,000. This is, for those of you who don't know, this is the fund that during the course of the year, if there are unexpected issues or expenses that come up, departments and town administrator's office can go to the finance committee and request a transfer from the reserve fund. We just went through this recently with the town planner, who made a request before the finance committee for funding for a consultant to help assist us for the Maytown meeting with the MBTA zoning. So the finance committee agreed to that. But you will note that in FY22 and FY23, there weren't any transfers from that. So, based on that run rate and the fact that we had such a significant deficit, the recommendation here is to reduce that by about 17%. And that's pretty much it.
That's a pretty good catch-up we made there. We had 9:20 adjournment. It wasn't looking good there for a while.
Chuck, I'm Catholic. I like short homilies. So.
Good night.
Good night. Speaking of short homilies.
Any debrief from tonight at all? Questions that you have?
I would say that...
Just note that this finance committee on a percentage basis gave up more than anybody else.
I don't know, we gave up quite a bit.
I'm just kidding.
The park and rec.
The select board gave up 100% of their stipends.
That's right. You didn't give it away. It was taken.
Just the park and rec, I think, that they overshot by 45 minutes. So that's something I want to be cognizant of, stuff like that. That presentation, I think, though
This wasn't the
very
place.
valuable, that absolutely could have been presented probably
a month ago.
Yeah, or on an off cycle, not part of this.
I think and the reason we did it for this is because that it was a request specifically, not just to the select board. They wanted to do it to the finance, make the presentation to the finance committee and the
but
select
we can
board.
always do it joint. I just think then we should have just slotted for more time, because there was no way that was
Well, I had them last.
Yeah.
So everybody else is sitting in the room.
That's all. But no, it was a good presentation, very informative, but I just thought, I'm looking at all the other department heads sitting here 45 minutes past their, so it's a little, just want to be cognizant of that.
And I also have to say, great presentation and so on, even though as a data analyst, but letting one department basically take an hour to say how important they are, I think I can imagine most departments. I could imagine police, fire, anybody doing a presentation saying how wonderful they are. So, and I don't want to be flippant, but it's an odd thing to do right before the budget, it feels like.
Well, yeah,
And that data's been back since September?
I don't know when it was actually finalized, Chuck, but I think the request came in, I'm going to say sometime in December, that they wanted to get out and make the presentation. And so it wasn't, and again, they wanted to do it to the select board in some sort of joint meeting.
What kind of the joint meetings?
Yeah, no, it's point taken.
Yeah, or we just start making that, we don't know, since they've come out of enterprise mostly, that they may be considered one of the bigger departments, and we need to give them more time like we do with,
that's fair to say.
Police, fire, DPW, Park and Rec now falls in there with schools, obviously.
So, just for people keeping track, I have that from the budget book, the schools are down 200, schools are returning 250 from what they asked, then the show rate's up 60. Was there anything that I missed? Those are the two numbers that I had. I didn't know if there were others.
That's all that's happened so far. Everything else has been basically what Ryan has cut already.
And I think what Steve had proposed, and it seemed like there was general agreement to that with the school reducing their budget by 250, that I think we had about 210,000 in the Chapter 70 revenue number, so we would bring that back down. And then the other 40,000 would be applied to the Neshoba number, that then, still a little bit of...
So
right. I was just keeping track of...
The things that we have outstanding are now whatever the NAGOG group gives as a line item, and about 20,000 for Neshoba.
And anything else that comes up.
And whatever else is coming up.
Yeah. So, sorry, Ryan, there was one, I forget which department it was now, but there's one salary, I know the building inspector said the wrong thing on the slide.
Yeah, so I think I gotta go back and planning and the building.
There's a lot of moving pieces with the admin staff, Ryan was
so I think,
switching around.
So the only personnel request so far, as of tonight, we have not approved was, there was one personnel request this evening. It was from
EHS increased to a full-time.
And that's not in this.
That's in this.
Yeah, that's not in this budget.
There was one I thought personnel request.
Park and Rec.
Thank you.
Right.
So that's.
And that was trying to shift some more over to the operating budget. The reason we looked at how much, what the resources were in the revolving fund, saying that's something that could be covered. You'll see the same thing with Mark's. Mark had initially talked about doing some of that, knowing, when he makes his LCTV proposal, saying, okay, at some point I want to put more in the operating budget, but there are resources they have, and so he didn't end up putting that forward.
One of the big pieces of news that we got in this past week, just to share, is we got the actual valuation report for OPEB. The valuation is done every 2 years. The last report showed a large reduction in our OPEB expense for this current fiscal year. We based our budget on that number plus a increased payment, as we've always done with OPEB and pension. We got the actual report in, and it was a combination of 2 or 3 things. They decreased the discount rate from 6.5 to 6, which increases your liability, which then increases your expense. And that's good that they've done that. It's hurtful that they did it in combination with the stock market going down. So the valuation report was done on a minus 15% stock market back in 22, end of 22 into 23, and some data issues that were happened on the last report that was submitted, last data that was submitted to the actuary. That was corrected this time, and it added greatly to the expense. So the expense that was $300,000 is now 1.6 million for 25.
There's good news here, though. Get to it.
There is good news.
Come on, you could have gone with this.
There is good news. So what we basically did is we took the extra payment from the pension that was in the budget, shifted it to the OPEB, which covers the assessment.
Just $900,000.
For OPEB, and we still have the free cash by policy that goes into both line items as the extra payment. I think wasn't much,
No.
20%, 150,000.
So what does that mean for next year? Will we see the same?
We've already worked it into the numbers for next year. We changed it right into the fact. So OPEB went up slightly, pension will go down slightly.
But the bottom line, let me see if I understand this, but we had, Ryan's budget had assumed reducing the extra payment, which it sounds like, can we not do that now? Or because we had to put it to the other category?
Well, we're still meeting the financial policy, the Fincom's policy of.
But yes, we're reducing
It comes from free cash, so that 20% piece of the pie from free cash goes to pay pension into, I think it was 150, something like that. It's not much money, but it's something that's being paid. But we had to, the main thing is we had to shift what we're going to prepay for pension into OPEB just to meet the expense that we had for this year.
Right, so we will
Plus
be...
the schedule, which we thought was going to end in 35, has now been extended to 45.
So just to be clear, we're prepaying less.
Much less.
Much less.
Much less.
Right, okay.
Because our
But more than most.
Understood.
There's the good news.
A lot more.
End on a good note, Gary.
Right, no, but just in terms of fiscal, tightness.
Yeah, it's showing.
We heard that number come in on the valuation report, and we all kind of panicked until we looked at the numbers and saw that we could shift that without affecting the bottom line, so it was a big help. It hurts us that we're not prepaying on the pension side, but we're not affecting this year's budget negatively.
Right, but it does feel like yet another, oh my God, we got saved by, we got saved by finding another seat cushion to find another chunk of money under, and if we've,
We're running out of
seat cushion.
Yes.
Right, so I think they can, I'll just say my concern is that, next year's gonna be worse, and, it's still not clear to me that we're doing, I feel like we're doing so much for there to be little visible pain in this budget when we told everyone at town meeting that this was going to be a really bad budget year. And so at this year's town meeting, when we say, oh, we solved it, we've looked into all the seat cushions, but next year's going to be bad, why would anyone believe us?
It's a testament to our conservative policies that have been put in place. I mean, Acton right now is at, what's their deficit? Brian, do you know what the?
No, yeah.
6 point whatever million.
I mean, they're going for an override, right?
So you're talking over, and that's something that I think.
Yeah,
I don't want to get to that point to say, look, we weren't lying to you. I think
in budget cuts.
But I don't.
If you look at that list that Ryan supplied us, there's $1.5 million in expenditure cuts that were made from the submitted budgets to what we see in our books. That's a lot.
This was a tough year, and I don't think people will appreciate it, certainly at town meeting. They might not see all the sweat that went into this $3 million deficit we dealt with, but
Again, I give Ryan all the credit in the world for balancing.
But point taken, I know where you're going with this, but I think it's hard to, besides getting word out, this is a ridiculously tight period of time that we're in between this year, next year, and probably the year after, until our growth starts to shoot the other way, which is reliant on, we know, the big hole in the ground.
Yeah, I think that, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's really.
Yeah, I think like that's stuff to be thoughtful about. It's like we're already talking about, the things we're deferring, right? We're deferring, the requested new hires, we're cutting expenses, and we talked about a bunch of new expenses in 2026 already tonight, right, that are not quantified, right? But I think that's probably what we're going to think about, like, how do we want to present that to the town? That's how
we get the $250 from the schools is coming right back to the operating budget next year. They're not going to forget that.
Yeah.
Jerry, Fred, and I are meeting with Nick tomorrow morning to go over the financials for the SOAR once it comes online and what the town's carrying costs are going to be, which is still going to be a big number, even though other users are in. We'll still be the big user until 550 King is developed.
That was predictable. I mean,
it is.
Fred was talking about it 10 years ago.
But it's just another component that's going into the next few years.
And we already know we're going to have to rework stuff for the orchard. Like, there's already some things we know we're going to have to work into fiscal 25 too.
Well, there's some of the, we touched the Fincom reserve last year. That potentially is things happen at the orchard this year that are not unexpected. That might be the route we have to go, which is another thing we're not used to having to do. So,
which will impact.
Well,
but we're not tapping into stabilization though.
But that's also
amazing. We are sinking into this period of time. We got through COVID without doing it, and here we are without doing it. We're still putting in, and So
we didn't put in last year.
No, but we're flat. Which is,
right. You look at reserve fund though too, right? It's like the intent of that is for like unexpected stuff. We've already talked about the orchard being a known thing. We're going to have to address in 25.
Right.
So I think
they're putting it together, but there will be unknowns. I guarantee it.
you know, there's, depending on how this RFP comes out and what we get back and the timeline for the negotiations or decision-making, we might be looking at a special town meeting to handle it as
It
well.
could be bigger than the bread box in the short term, yeah.
So, which, you know, nobody wants particularly, but.
Well, except the town wants us to take care of the orchards.
Right, nobody wants to have to do it at a special
Yeah,
town meeting,
right.
but,
Right.
you know,
We've been
the way these things work out isn't necessarily consistent with
Right.
our budget.
Motion adjourned.
Motion?
Second.
Second. Finance committee is adjourned.
Mark, all in favor?
Aye. We are back
Thank you, Littleton.
next Monday night for